যদি সবাই ফিরে যায়, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায়, যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায়, তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে, তবে একলা চলো রে। যদি আলো না ধরে, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে, তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো রে।
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. Sorry for getting a little late. I was preparing for this live stream only, and it is weird as fuck. I'm sure the people who have been following my channel for more than 6 months, 1 year, will agree with me when if I claim that I'm not the kind to make bombastic claims just to get views, make bombastic, disrespectful, catchy, controversial claims just for views and subscriptions, and so that I get negative publicity and stuff. And I deliberately, consciously, and I could argue more often than not successfully, managed to not do that. But trust me, when I say today at the beginning of this podcast to discuss that podcast by Raj Shamani with Dr. Abhijit Banerjee, the Nobel laureate, that this is so weird. That's the most merciful, most polite, most politically correct I can be with whatever Abhijit Banerjee said here, whatever Dr. Abhijit Banerjee said here. Please let me know how many of you all have watched the podcast, because some of you all have, because I did not know about this podcast. I'm doing this basically out of audience demand, kind of, because a lot of people, you all kept reminding me about this. And firstly, it's weird because of how many mental gymnastics and absolute inane monkey balancing Abhijit Banerjee goes through to defend socialism and downplay India's hopes, successes, achievements. Absolutely crazy. And we are on the economically on the disagreement aisle with Abhijit Banerjee. So it would almost seem obvious that I'm saying these things at the beginning of a podcast discussing Abhijit Banerjee, but I am not, because you all know I don't do this, especially with academics and stuff. I am not disrespectful with these people, but this was borderline fucking intolerable madness. And we have discussed one other interview by Abhijit Banerjee as well, somewhere in Europe. There also he said insane stuff like, I don't agree with, like, he was meaning to say fiscal conservatives and economic right wingers, that you need inequality for progress, whereas the argument always has been that inequality is inevitable, not that make up inequality somehow, like Nizam of Hyderabad, and then you will have free market prosperity, like Nizam of Hyderabad was the Javier Milei of his time. That's the kind of bullshit Abhijit Banerjee was trying to push in that interview. But since he's a Nobel laureate, he is surrounded 24/7 by people who want to get into his good books. I again diagnose the problem of him never fucking getting any pushback from anybody whatsoever in the last 10-15 years probably, which is why a guy like Raj Shamani, around the second half of the podcast, offers mere pushback. Okay, let's say you are writing puff piece articles and you are writing on how Superman rescues cats from kittens from trees, etc. And that's the article. Superman is very happy with you. And one day you ask, remember Superman at the end of Man of Steel? There was a lateral bit of collateral there, and that's when Superman either leaves or faints or destroys you with his vicious laser rays that comes out of his eyes or whatever it's called. Raj Shamani, God bless his soul, he offered pushback. Even though he was agreeing for the entire time, all his questions are based on premises that are fundamentally straight out of SFI party offices and Faka flats. Even then, on the certain business things that Raj Shamani knows for being an entrepreneur himself, just that much of pushback on just that much of knowledge. Everything else he happily swallowed. He offers minimum pushback. Abhijit Banerjee breaks down all his arguments come down crashing like a fucking house of cards. He gets nuked. His entire premise for everything else gets nuked. It goes over. And he goes on stammering and stammering and stammering. And has no answers. And Raj Shamani was not even asking him some gotcha questions. You're like, no, but sir, you know what about this? And Abhijit Banerjee is like, that was the spectrum of Abhijit Banerjee's answer at Raj Shamani, his questions. Okay, imagine when he gets pushback from real economists. Now we'll start. Okay, today my mic is going to act like a bodybuilder's dick. We'll have to deal with it. Let's watch this shit fucking show. Excuse me. If you are this hellbent on pushing lies and crazy misrepresentations, statistical fallacies, at some point we have to ask those questions that are you even an honest faith actor? Are you a good faith actor here? Although he is starting he has a lab in UP working with the Yogi government, so I'm sure everything is fine. What's it called? Raj Shaman. Oh, here it is. Let's start. Let me check out the comments a little. দাদা সিজেপি রিলেটেড রাহুল আর প্রিয়াঙ্কাকে রিটার্ন করেছে মনে মনে আমি চাই কংগ্রেস হাইজ্যাক করে নিক Yeah, the master would be right now if Mamta goes to that protest. Mamta wants to go there. Nobody wants her at the protest, but just create a hullabaloo about this on social media. Okay, pretend to be CJP supporters, open fake accounts, or pretend to be CJP supporters. Ask Mamta Banerjee, invite her, tag the fuck out of every AITC handle. Make sure Mamta Banerjee goes to CJP. That's the end of their clown show.
Which their husband.
You don't take GDP very seriously.
I don't take it very seriously because I know a little bit about what goes into the sausage. I don't have a.
Yeah, remember this point. Remember this point of his that he does not have much faith in numbers. Remember this point because it's going to be important later on when he depends on those numbers to justify freebies. And also remember that I said he hates tech bros, okay? And I know most of my viewership are tech bros. Today, I'll prove to you why he hates you. Wait for the entire podcast.
Much faith in those numbers.
Abhijit Banerjee, Nobel laureate, author, economist, and co-founder of JPAL, has spent decades studying poverty, inequality, and economic development across the world.
So we are sixth largest economy, and yet we have one of the world's most poorest population in the country. How both of the things are true at the same time?
We have a gigantic economy, but we have an even more gigantic population. So once you do the division, you get to where the real meat is.
So are we getting richer or poorer then?
The question is more who's getting richer, and there some people are getting richer and richer.
So the problem is that the Indian apparently good pushback that Raj Shamani has managed to give to a fucking Nobel laureate is going to be pretty much ignored by the world and Indians pretty much because Indians in general are leftists. Not many libertarians will go through this bullshit for 1.5 hours anyway. The commies will be very happy listening to whatever he says. And the commies, when the pushback section comes in the podcast, will switch off their brains and think along with Abhijit Banerjee and go along stammering in their heads as well. That they will think that way, and by that time that they are done stammering inside their minds, Abhijit Banerjee will have come up with his bullshit answer, and they will say, yes, exactly, yeah, of course, that's it. So Raj Shamani, the unsung hero today.
And they said,
What do you call middle class? Give me some income range.
people who make over 30, 35,000 a month, all the way up to people who make 2 lakhs a month.
Recently, China is trying to do in the world of AI and jobs. It's going to be illegal to replace and cut human beings. Do you think that's the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think so. Some job can be done much better. You should let technology do that. But I think if it's only 5% better, it's not clear that the social cost is worth it.
Would you believe in the stats and data that we have that middle class salaries has been flat over 2-3 decades now? It's not increasing at all.
What that means is that
Why only rich are getting richer in India? You said that you would explain Indian economics with the help of a pressure cooker.
it has something to do with 2 things.
Before we start today's podcast, if you have found anything valuable from this channel, please so Saman ke according
Why only rich?
God Empire, you said that you have a problem with advocacy and letting go of your anonymity. The 2 things we require for being in CSK Vanguard. So what's the point of you joining?
Are getting richer in India?
I think there's several pieces to that. As you will notice, there are certain global products which everybody wants and call them.
Okay, rich are getting richer, guys. As you all know, as you all might have gotten the memo. My question would be, are the middle class also getting rich? Are the poor classes also getting rich? Are they? According to Abhijit Banerjee himself, yes. But rich people are getting faster too quickly. Why should they? Why isn't their growth proportional? So it's not even about equal wealth these days, because that's just too out there. So they'll not get taken seriously anywhere on planet Earth today. That's why these people now say, all we are looking for is an equal rate of getting richer.
Call them iPhone, call them Prada, whatever, call them.
But it's God Empire, it's not a WhatsApp discussion group and hurl abuses at Muslims all day. There's no point in staying in the group and not being have a public profile everywhere else and talk about those things.
Chat GPT. But if you own those, and those products are all basically, the production cost is very little. Once you produce them, it's just an intellectual property. The Prada's Kolhapuri costs the same 600 rupees or whatever that any Kolhapuri costs. And then they sell it for 6,000 or whatever. So, it's
Probably 60,000.
60,000. I'm the last person who's going to buy a Kolhapuri from Prada. So it's not I haven't bothered to find out the price. But in any case, so the point is that it's not the cost. Therefore, if you happen to have the intellectual property to the thing that people want, it's infinitely scalable. You can keep selling it to more.
Now, I know he said this lightly as a casual remark, but it is important to get into this man's head and the basis of his views. Because if we take his views on just face value, it's not working anymore. Now, he makes a point he is making a fuss about the fact that he is never going to buy a Kolhapuri from Prada. What is the achievement in that? Is he better than people who buy Kolhapuri from Prada? What is he? Is he poorer than people who buy Kolhapuri from Prada? Does he have better fashion taste than people who buy Kolhapuri from Prada? Because in the end, it's even subjective. Why do you get to put a smile on your face for buying a Kolhapuri from Prada? Because the intuitive assertion and the accusation here is that, oh, you are such an idiot that you care about status so much, which comes from the branding, that you are buying a very cheap thing from a branded company. You are so stupid. I am so intelligent. The underlying assumption again here is for himself that therefore he thinks he does not have any inclination to things like status. He does not signal things about himself. Only the dumbass who buys Kolhapuri in Prada is signaling to people that he can afford Prada. also signaling to people that he likes to wear Indian chappals. So, on the other hand, Abhijit Banerjee, according to himself, is not signaling anything. He could have showed up here just as well in a Metallica t-shirt. It's only a mere coincidence that we see him here in a kurta and Johor coat. He's not signaling anything about himself. Everywhere else, he sometimes wears a Metallica t-shirt, sometimes he wears a wife beater, sometimes he wears a shirt, sometimes he goes topless. There's nothing to signal here. He is above signaling, which is horse fucking shit. Read René Girard, people.
And you don't run out of it, because it's the cost of producing it is very, very little. So therefore, that's sort of the argument we make in our 2019 book, Good Economics for Hard Times. We make the argument that we're in a world of massive increase.
Hard times never end wherever these policies are applied.
Increasing returns, and so those people who happen to have the technologies where there is demand are going to become vastly rich, and the rest of the people, there is really very little that you can do to compete against that. So you are going to be, you can't really get there. In fact, now AI is doing something else, and it's been happening for a while. If there is this whole, even in India, the business press even recognizes that middle class salaries have not been rising.
How many of you all know this is a myth? That sentence does not make sense economically or grammatically. Economically, maybe, if you do a lot of layers on layers of statistical fallacies. Middle class salaries have not been rising. It can either mean that in an Indian middle class in 1950 earned 35,000 rupees, and it does so today as well. Therefore, they have not increased. If they are, in that case, they are not inflation adjusted, so their salaries have in fact gone down. If it was 35,000 30 years back, and it's 35,000 today as well, which is not the case. The other issue is, if it's inflation adjusted, it has increased. But the only basis for them saying that the middle class salary has not increased is because they are not tracking individual people or families over 20 years. Over 20 years, everybody's salaries have gone up. They would probably be better off if there was not so much inflation. Inflation is bad inherently, yes, everyone knows inflation is bad. But their salaries have not become completely pointless because of inflation. They have beaten the inflation to some degrees. On the other hand, quality of life has gone up exponentially. Today, I'm sitting more comfortably doing a live stream than Alexander the Great, Chhatrapati Shivaji, Chandragupta Maurya ever spent a day in their lives. I'm right now more comfortable than maybe Winston Churchill. Yeah. Marcus Aurelius, definitely, he spent his life in a tent. So what has not gone up? On the other hand, more and more people keep getting into the middle class. On the other hand, our borders are practically open borders. More and more people keep coming in and showing up in the data of our poor people, some of whom go into the middle class, on top of the Indians who are already going into the middle class from the lower class. So on what basis has not middle class salaries gone up?
This has been written about by people in the business press.
Yeah.
Software salaries are flat, this and that. And that's because partly, the code writing is increasingly automated.
This phenomenon is obviously true. This is a 5-year-old phenomenon. 5, 7, 8 max. Before that, it was all about IT booms. Because are we saying that coding software is not a lucrative job? Yeah, we are starting to say that, but we haven't been saying that for the last 30 years. Yeah, maybe its time has come. What does software as an industry becoming a less employee dependent industry got to do with saying that middle class salaries have not gone up ever since Neanderthal era?
Claude can write much better code than I can. So therefore, why would I do it? And that means that there's a lot of jobs that used to be well-paid jobs in India, which are kind of disappearing. And so if you look at the data on the income distribution, the rich in the income distribution that are the data that we collect is totally leaves out the really rich. You can't get to their apartments because their one sends you away. So therefore, the only people rich in those are actually the middle class. And those people are actually losing ground, even in the national sample survey, relative to the poor, who are getting, who are doing construction jobs or this or that. There the wage is rising, not fast, but it's rising somewhat. The wages of the software engineers is flat. And so, in fact, in the data, it looks like inequality is falling. Now, that's, to me, my guess would be that's false. It's because we really have no data on the rich. And there is none. I mean, there used to be tax data. Many years ago, Thomas Piketty and I used the tax data to show that a big part of the gap between
Our old friend Thomas Piketty.
The kind of income from the national sample survey and income from the national product is the gap can be explained by the exclusion of the rich.
But are you saying that middle class is feeling poorer just because there are no good jobs left?
There are fewer and fewer good jobs, and that's true globally. I mean, it's not something that's easily fixed because of a lot of the Indian middle class were in the service industry,
and because every commie's favorite country, China, undercut everybody by treating their workers as slaves. Abhijit Banerjee himself will speak of China in lush, fluffy, high tones later in the podcast, after Rashomani kind of got him. And he says, no, China doesn't allow all this bad behavior by, evil corporates. But they did some stuff in the last 20 years, which made them able enough to undercut the fuck out of everybody else's businesses. Which is... Is that something a commie should be proud of, guys? Can you really discuss the evils of Xi Jinping in a fuck-up flat right before you tear that packet of condom?
And so unless you are, there are jobs that are clearly going to actually, there'll be more demand for it, like being a healthcare professional is going to still be good. Because I think AI will help with healthcare, but I think eventually if we have an aging population.
By the way, healthcare technology itself, services, best practices of an industry, of every industry, haven't all those things gone up? Those things always go up. But what's the rate of those things going up? How much of industrial, technological, economic progress, GDP growth rate was there between 300 BC to 1400 AD versus 1991 to 2026? And what's driving that growth? What's raising those standards? What's the mysterious sauce behind that stuff? Because Abhijit Banerjee is aware of mysterious sauces that go to our GDP numbers, apparently. What's the mysterious sauce behind this magic?
Increasingly, and demand for healthcare will go up. So I do think that healthcare will be fine. Teaching will be fine, I think. I mean, though eventually I think some of the lecture will be...
Teaching will be fine. He has more hopes than I do. Although mine is more of wishful thinking.
Replaced by, but I still think that there'll be a lot of complementary activity explaining the lecture and all that, even if it's an online lecture. But I think other jobs, like for example being an accountant, AI is so much better at accounting than anybody, and it's just, or being a low-level animator or any of these kinds of jobs which are kind of reasonably high-skill jobs. It's not that they are, you have to learn how to do it.
Yeah,
but it's just AI is so much better at those things. So I'm pessimistic about that class of jobs being, so people need to move out and into maybe podcasting, some creative sector maybe.
But what do you call middle class? Give me some income range. In India.
Yeah. So I would say people who make maybe over 35,000 a month, all the way up to people who make 1.5, 2 lakhs a month.
Fair enough. Gaudiya Divanchist, please try to check out this live stream from the beginning. My suggestion is do something online, pretend to be CJP supporters, and make sure Mamata Banerjee is invited to the protest. The moment Mamata Banerjee shows up there, she has said today as well that she wants to go there. I believe she is being asked to not go there because everyone in India knows how she is. Just make sure Mamata reaches there. Drum up demand for Mamata going to the CJP protest. After that, everything else will fall into places so beautifully.
Even more actually. Maybe these days
3 lakhs.
3 lakhs. Yeah, that's that range.
Okay, so 30,000
Make sure CJP has to carry the baggage of Mamata. Taint their ideas.
to 3 lakh, you would call it middle class.
Yeah, 30,000 is really the bottom.
And specifically, if you talk about tech jobs, it's like 18,000 or maybe lesser than that.
Yeah. So it's 30,000 is a reasonable benchmark for a middle class job, and then maybe the top end of that is 3 lakhs or something. Yeah.
And
Shayan, a tech bro, and Arina House Thomaswell here. Wait for the part, okay? Abhijit Banerjee hates tech bros, according to me. Don't sue me, Abhijit Banerjee. It comes in the second half.
would you believe in the stats and data that we have that middle class salaries, which is 30,000 to 3 lakh, has been flat over 2-3 decades now? It's not increasing at all.
What that means is that in
Have the same people and families remained middle class for those 30 years. That's all that matters. And if it has, it's because of freebies, not because of Adani getting richer.
inflation adjusted, the salaries are actually fallen for many of these groups. They are
That definitely, I think, makes sense. I wonder what causes inflation. Have you ever heard of a little something called cash transfers? Okay, not all our inflation is because of cash transfers, but we have DA, which is a thing that is applied to treat the problem of inflation, which literally is a thing that creates inflation. So, salary adjusted for inflation, kaise badega?
inflation has been not huge, but still over 10 years, there's been substantial inflation. So,
But why do you think this is happening?
Because of socialism.
The top talent CEO salaries has been increasing and it's gone over the roof. But the middle class salaries have stayed flat and probably fallen if you adjust it with inflation.
a lot of these jobs
CEOs, the CEOs who are not founders, have their salaries gone up as well? If yes, why? Why is the founder so in love with the CEO that he feels the need to increase his salary and nobody else's? Why is that CEO valuable to that degree? Why aren't rest of his employees valuable enough where he has to increase their salaries, otherwise they leave? Why aren't there more companies to go to for the employee, saying fuck you to the existing company, to his current employer?
were, at some point, these were jobs that there was no substitute for, and increasingly technology is substituting for those jobs. So it's not. It's a relatively simple point.
But shouldn't in the companies where people are making a lot of money, or probably these companies which are global products, they are profiting a lot and making a lot of money, the salaries should rise there?
There's an interesting use of the word "should" there. So I would agree with you, but it's a very specific moral view of the company. The company takes the view that if I can replace this guy and get AI to do it for less, I'm going to do it. It's and the problem with the market is that it has its own logic, and unless you actually actively resist it, and there is, let me say that it's not true that the whole world works the same way. In Germany or in Denmark, the highest and lowest salaries the band is relatively small within a company, or in Sweden, or even in France.
What about their annadatas? What's their life like? And the industrialization that they went through, which has now been completely, not completely, it's largely come down under the regime of Angela Merkel. How did that industrialization happen? Why couldn't we do that kind of industrialization? And if all that Abhijit Banerjee today bothers about is apparently out of the blue, no historical context, but to people who are poor today out of the blue, just give them money somehow or the fuck, and everything will be glorious for here to eternity. But if we in fact had done the industrialization like Germany, would we need an Abhijit Banerjee to solve the problems of today's poor?
Though it's a little bit higher, but
will Abhijit Banerjee allow India to do industrialization like Germany did today? Or would he like to be there 20 years later to sell his solutions to the problems that apparently mysteriously happen in societies.
Not the entrepreneurs, but the CEO is often paid maybe 10 times what the lowest employee is paid. In India, you can make that division, and in the US as well. So there is some labor markets are much more normed, much more, there is a expectation that you don't cross a certain ratio. And the US used to have that till the 70s. And since then, the ratio of the CEO, I mean, you think of Elon Musk getting paid $54 billion. Okay. I'm not making the number up. And so $54 billion.
How much did Elon Musk pay in taxes by selling shares, for which he obviously other people became poorer who owned Tesla stocks? How much did he pay? If Elon Musk getting paid $54 billion is a huge fucking deal, his tax amount, which is also in billions, why isn't that news? And if it is news, which is, by the way, highest in the history of United States of fucking America, why isn't Abhijit Banerjee pointing that out as well? What's his agenda here?
So a billion is a million times 1,000. So 54,000.
Oh, random facts to make the emphasis on. Now this is disrespectfully childish. He is applying soft bigotry of low expectations on us. He's infantilizing us. He thinks we are retards like his usual fan base. A billion is a million times 1,000. If my aunt was a man, he would be my uncle. If you start a sentence with if, and you can have a gala time writing Harry Potter and become a billionaire. Of course, he might hate that as well. But what's the point of this tangent?
Is if somebody gets paid 50, which is a very good salary for.
So all he's doing here is trying to get you riled up against Elon Musk. There's no other argument going on here. Why aren't you, as a random guy on the internet watching Rashtromani's podcast, why aren't you pissed off enough about Elon Musk getting 54 billions? Whereas you don't even know how many zeros there are in 54 billion. How dare you not be pissed off? Why aren't you pissed off enough? Are you a pussy? Get up, stand up, and do something about it. Maybe do a revolution. Maybe identify as a cockroach. Do something. And he's going to do this wink, wink, nudge. He's going to be like, I'm not saying you should take up arms. I'm not saying become Naxals. But how does a man like Elon Musk get $54 billion? Why aren't you riled up about it? In the end, the argument is just plain crass, cringe stuff like jealousy. Why aren't you pissed off with what that guy has? And why does he have it so much? And do you know how much so much? Million times of million is billion.
Low-skilled employee, probably they don't get it. They probably get 27, not 54. That's a million times more. I'm just giving you some, kind of a benchmark example. But the fact that that's considered acceptable socially, that's a problem to me. That's respecting the market way too much to say that, if I can get it, why shouldn't I? Is a level of cynicism which eventually undermines the social equilibrium.
Tech bros, remember this point like your life depended on it. If you are planning to watch the rest of this podcast with me or with somebody else, remember this point, okay? Because he is going to say something exactly the opposite or hint at it. Or you could draw that conclusion from something he says when it comes to tech bros. Okay? Here his argument is that generating employment at the cost of anything is great because social cohesion balance, too many jobless people might become criminals, etc. Like it has already happened in West Bengal because of communism and Trinamool and anti-Hindutva forces. That might happen in the rest of the country if too much capitalism happens. In West Bengal, it happened because of leftist politics, but in the rest of the country, it's going to happen because of capitalism and rich getting richer and too quickly, in fact. So, how about we give jobs to everyone? We use less machines so that people have jobs. Because social cohesion, bro. Because developmental economics. Remember, it's not just about economics. It's about feelings, morals, ethics, also known as integral humanism, by the way. This is Ekatma Manavvad. And this is also Ek Karl Marx Manavvad. So in the second half of the podcast, when it comes to tech bros, he's not going to hold on to this point. What's popularized Rishi Dev, Kashmiri Comrade story? Who is he?
You saw what recently China is trying to do in the world of AI and jobs. They are saying that it's going to be illegal to replace and cut human beings because of AI jobs. Do you think that's the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Chinese.
It should be illegal to cut people off because AI can.
না উৎসব কুমার মণ্ডল অন্য যে কোনো সময় হতে পারতো, শুধু একটাই কারণে হবে না। এখন যারা আছে পাগলা ষাঁড়, অকারণ অনেক খোঁচাখুচি করছে, পাগলা ষাঁড়ের কানে পালক গুজে দেখছে, দেখি কি করে পাগলা ষাঁড়। এখনো আমাদের এসব ওইসব থ্রেট নেই।
Be more effective than humans?
The question is, what would the human do? You know, in the end, one thing to realize is that when somebody gets fired in a state, maybe in India we don't do much for them, but if you take a state which is more welfareist, China is more welfareist than we are. They are more conscious of.
Guys, I told you all about this in the beginning. China fanboying, China standing is going to go on from now to the end of the podcast, completely ignoring how China became what it is. Yeah, it was because of communism, you know. A laborer's life in China starts with studying the Communist Manifesto in the morning. Then he goes to his field, holds everybody's hands, sings International, and it's a nice commune they live in. They grow some weed, smoke some of it, sell some of it, exchange it with some other bros from another mothers, and then they go to sleep. That's the life of a Chinese laborer. You know, that's how they got here. And that's why China is more welfareist than we are. And that's why China is awesome. We suck, you know.
Unemployment being a social problem, it becomes state's liability. The state pays for those people to somehow to survive, to transition to another job. It's not free. It's money that comes out of somewhere that's paying for those people. And so I think there is a legitimate ground to say that if I can increase my profit by 5% by firing somebody, but I ruin somebody's life, then there is some value attached to that.
So let's not ruin his life by making him go jobless. Let's ruin his life by making him work 18 hours a day. I think many libertarians would be on board with this.
A choice that should be taken into account, that there's some social concern that is reflected in.
Tech bros, remember this point for your own sake. And remember this point for the next time you debate with another tech bro who might be a commie, who will obviously be Brahmin or Vaidya or caste if it's Bengali. And you are discussing Abhijit Banerjee specifically. Point out to him, remember this point, okay? Social cohesion is related with jobs.
Count that there's some social concern that is reflected in the fact that this is somebody who will have who has children who go to school, who have hard time, rather suddenly, even if he can get a job somewhere.
Remember the questions that do tech bros have kids and do they go to schools?
Else to move and to cut his standard of living and to sell his car and move out of his apartment. All of these things are extremely costly and emotionally costly, but also economically costly. You have to take his children out of the good school they go to and put them into a corporation school. I mean, all of those choices have social costs. And so the idea that this is just a market's logic, which you seem to be implying, seems to be
avoiding social cost, by the way, okay? And it's just his random made up definition of social cost, okay? There's no English dictionary going on here. No Renan Martin. Social cost means whoever is poorest right now, according to Abhijit Banerjee's definition, not any objective definition of poor, maybe our poverty line, only deserve to be taken seriously when we are discussing social cohesion. Only their jobs going away causes social cohesion. Okay. Now you might think this guy is obviously, at least moralistically speaking, probably against AI creating job losses, right? Then how can he be against tech bros? You will see later when specifically the context of having jobs at the cost of anything comes up.
Missing the fact that there's no justice in the market. It's just somebody got lucky and got a better technology, and therefore I'm screwed. And there's costs being imposed on people. So I don't know. You can obviously have a different view. I mean, Elon Musk surely has a different view, but I'm not going to take that view.
But do you think then you should continue working with employees who are ineffective and
By the way, let's kind of go below the belt a little, just because he's been so annoying. Okay, a tad. Yes, you may not hold a view that Elon Musk holds, but look at what he has done, and look at, let's say, who pays his bills and who pays your bills for doing what? What exactly? How tangible are they? Or even theoretically, how tangible are your products that you sell to society? And in comparison to, especially, Elon Musk's products that the society accesses and benefits from. At one point, maybe at some point, we ask, no, you can't know enough about this. I don't think we can agree on that line all the time, but sometimes this needs to be brought up because this shit is going out of hand.
inefficient with the growing technologies of the world?
The question is, what does that sentence mean? So inefficient, yes, maybe if some job can be done much better, you should let technology do that. But I think if it's only 5% better, it's not clear that.
This is, at least based on the premises and based on the stage that he has said, inside that framework, this is not a bad argument that if there's a huge gain, then yes, then yeah, makes sense that you lose your job. But if it's just 5% improvement, fuck that. Now, maybe therefore he is saying that the accountant, etc., where the gain is huge by deploying AI, maybe that's fair according to him. I have no grouse with this argument.
The social cost.
But unless I will have a grouse with this only if his 5% is a random fucking number that he doesn't apply anywhere when push comes to shove. If there is actually tangible, quantifiable data showing that this is a 5% increase in quality, productivity, efficiency, profits even, and not 10%, 20%, 30%, only then. Maybe then you can have a law that 5% growth. No, with law then you disincentivize growing to 6%, etc. But 5%, if at all it is quantifiable, this argument at least makes sense. A policy might not make sense.
Cost is worth it. And second, I think society has an obligation to think about, well, then what will this?
Oh, Neon, that is the recurring theme of this entire podcast. Everything that he says is based on subjective words with no clear definitions in the world and no clear definition provided here by him. That's the entirety of this podcast. He goes on giving out random conclusions without comparing it with something else. It's all in an abstract and in a vacuum. There's no pressure testing but to any of the claims he brings up.
This person do. I think one day we're going to face this problem in droves. There'll be people extremely angry because they have nothing to do. If you think of what happened in the US, why there is so much support for Trump, it's because there are places where people had jobs. They had.
No, the hilarious part is Raj Shamani actually probably seemingly agrees with these things, okay? Because he's your run-of-the-mill liberal who says, I don't understand politics, but my stances on X, Y, Z all coincide with an SFI guy's stances on those same things, mysteriously, okay? So he's that kind of a guy. But that is my point. Even such a guy, when he pushes back to to the minimum. Just because on some things he has a curiosity and he knows those things because of being an entrepreneur himself, Abhijit Banerjee gets to shambles. You will see metaphorically Abhijit Banerjee's stature coming down like 9/11, the Twin Towers.
Stable living, and then Chinese imports came in and took those jobs away, and they were 53 or 57 or 46.
Now China does good stuff, right? How did they beat USA in this? How did they take the gerbs away from the Americans? By building their capacity in terms of laborers, right? How did that happen, Dr. Banerjee?
And it's very hard.
Should we do that? Let's do that, right, Abhijit Banerjee? Our Kisan Netas, house arrest 5 years. Okay, so that probably means entire Punjab behind in house arrest for 5 years. Okay, maybe some less Thars on the road, but I guess we can survive that. And let's see what happens 5 years later.
At that age to move, because you're not fresh out of the of college or something, and you have your social network, you have your friends, you have your daughter goes to school, you are the coach of the local baseball team. I mean, whatever, this is kind of person, and they suddenly realize their life is no longer viable. They have to move somewhere and live with their 80-year-old parents because they don't have a living. And so they're extremely angry. One thing that you see in the US is reason why I think Trump is popular with a certain group is because he articulates that anger. There's a huge amount of anger. So I think eventually you can treat people like they're whatever machines, but they're not. The machines don't get angry, and I think we need to take that into account.
India is
China. What did China do? Did they make machines work like humans or humans work like machines?
6th largest economy in the world. Actually, we've fallen down to 6th now.
It's a bit about. These are they're very fragile things because the rupee goes down because there's a war in the Gulf. Are we suddenly much poorer?
See, he's also being fair. So then I guess because he compliments on the government as well. This is not a BJP versus Congress 2's thing. He says things have improved in BJP's years, before BJP's years as well. He does say all those things. So the problem is he genuinely believes in the other horseshit he's saying, which then makes you question what kind of simply manifesto chanting is going on in economics classrooms. What else is this? This is just sloganeering, appealing to your emotions, emphasizing and getting you riled up. There's no critical analysis, comparison, etc.
Or not. It depends very much on too many factors that have no real meaning. So.
True. But so we are 6th in the world, 6th largest economy, and yet we have one of the world's most poorest population in the country. How both of the things are true at the same time?
So one thing to
guys, fiscal conservatives, doesn't that question make your skin crawl? And I have a hunch Rashomani is not playing devil's advocate. He is the devil's advocate. He's not playing a devil's advocate. He believes in this. He believes in the retarded premise of this question.
And yet,
it depends very much on too many factors that have no real meaning.
This question.
true. But
A guy who can ask questions like this then asks another question to Abhijit Banerjee, which makes all his arguments fall apart out of the blue. That is the weirdness of this podcast. That's how on a weird level this podcast is. This is not bad, evil, awesome. This is just strange.
so we are 6th in the world, 6th largest economy, and yet we have one of the world's most poorest.
So do you know, guys? Since we are the 6th largest economy, we are supposed to have no poor people. Do you know that's the basic prerequisite to getting into the top 6 richest countries club? There's an association that you appeal to the secretary and he checks that, are there any poor people in your country? No, then you can't be 6. You can't be the 6th largest GDP, guys. No, you have to remain the 7th. And therefore, there are no poor people in the 5th largest, 4th largest, 3rd largest, 2nd largest, and the largest economies in the country, in the world. There are poor people 7th largest onwards.
Population in the country. How both of the things are true at the same time?
So one thing to say is I find this rather, I think there are reasons to maybe sometimes talk about the size of the economy, especially if we are talking about, what happens to the global economy if India suddenly slows down, then the size of India matters. But for poverty, what matters is per capita income. And we're still very poor in per capita income because it's...
Fair enough. This is a different tangent I'm going to take. Per capita is also very, very flawed, I guess. And I don't know economics enough to conclude whether it's the best option we have, like democracy, that it's very flawed, very problematic, but seems like it's the best one out there. Is GDP like that? Are there real problems to replacing GDP? Any economics guys here? Prash, College Street guy, you have PhD? No, I'm a graduation dropout. I'm not even a graduate. I dropped out in my third year on the final day of my exams because of ego issues with my college, and I was planning to become a musician anyway.
We have a gigantic economy, but we have an even more gigantic population. So once you do the division, you get to where...
Yeah, so in that case, the GDP is also a pretty flawed metric, especially because Bangladesh's GDP per capita is higher than ours, guys. Who gives a fuck?
Where the real meat is.
But so are we getting richer or poorer then?
We've been getting richer.
This premise. Who is this we? That's the basic question. Are we getting richer or poorer? If that is Rajshamani, yes, bro. What do you think? Is it Abhijit Banerjee? What do you think? If it's India, what do you think? What has not gotten better in India in terms of the things that are associated in the world of economics? What has not gotten better? If on those economy adjacent metrics we have only gotten better, individually on, I think, every sub-metric, anybody would agree, Rajshamani would agree, Abhijit Banerjee would agree, as he does broadly as well, then that hypothetical random fucking we is getting richer. And apparently Abhijit Banerjee agrees here as well. Yeah, okay.
I think...
But so are we getting richer or poorer then?
We've been getting richer. I think the question is more what you asked right at the beginning, which is who's getting richer? And there, some people are getting richer and richer and richer.
How sad. Some people should go get richer and richer and then stop. They should not get any further rich. Reminds me of a country long lost in time. Once upon a time, that country does not exist anymore. That state with capital S doesn't exist anymore. It had a policy that everyone has to be equal in their wealth. So if you have one cow and you are a dairy farmer, you can't have two cows. Even if you save up for it and buy one yourself, you will get shot by the state if you have more than one cow. And that's how you prevent people from getting, richer and richer and richer. And then what happens is, firstly, bread lines, and then you have to set up signboards saying, I know there's a famine going on, but please don't eat your children. It's illegal. You'll get fined if you eat your children. You'll go to jail if you eat your children. That's what happens when you prevent people from getting richer and richer and richer.
I go sometimes to a restaurant, expensive restaurant in India, and it's like you can't get in. There's so many people who can spend, 5,000 rupees per head without a thought. And then there are people who can't spend 5,000 rupees in a month, but it's not.
Ooh, an interesting, random, catchy trivia number showing sensational differences in two sets of numbers. Doesn't that catch your eye and get you attracted to the discourse already? Guys, this is textbook brainwashing tactics that Abhijit Banerjee is doing. If you have read Eric Hoffer's brilliant book, True Believer, you know that book is practically a guidebook to how to create mass movements. This is what's going on. He's creating comrades for his hypothetical or metaphorical or imagined army. People are reading out his manifesto. There's no limit to no, I am not going to be that disrespectful.
And there, some people are getting richer and richer and richer. I go to sometimes to a restaurant, expensive restaurant in India, and it's like you can't get in. There's so many people who can spend, 5,000 rupees per head with.
No. Those so many people who are waiting outside the fancy restaurant, how many people were waiting in front of fancy restaurants 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Middle class salary has not gone up. We are getting poorer, no? मगर फैंसी रेस्टोरेंट के सामने आके कौन भोसड़ी के खड़ा हो रहा है? More importantly, a lot of those people are probably first generation, second generation people to go into fancy restaurants, right? How did their family wealth jump happen? Is Abhijit Banerjee arguing that it's the same families and their descendants lining up in front of fancy restaurants? If not, then how does any of what he said for this last 20 minutes of retarded horse shit, how is any of that true or credible?
Without a thought. And then there are people who can't spend 5,000 rupees in a month, but it's not that. You see you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But what do you think?
Yeah, Rashmani knows what he's talking about.
Is the biggest thing then, which economists, politicians, or all the experts are probably fundamentally getting wrong about India's poor?
I don't think they're getting it wrong. I mean, I think there are kind of very politically motivated kind of people claiming there is no poverty in India. But I think if I spend a fair amount of time traveling in.
Did you see? He did that same thing again. Right when he is pushed even a little, he starts being hot shit. I mean, more so than he already was. But this is the same trick he pulled in that interview as well, which we had live reacted to months back, where he said, he has this hypothetical set of people on which he will assign anything that comes to his mind just to get out of an argument, just to sleaze out from the argument, okay? So there his point was that these people, meaning fiscal conservatives, they argue that inequality is necessary for growth. And now he says it's just political. That's why they say those things. As opposed to him, he is not being political at all. He does not have a toxic, creepy fetish for poor people, where poor people show up as the only group that you're supposed to be worried about. Although their poverty has not fallen from the sky and their wealth is not going to fall from the sky. Listen to this point.
Politicians or all the experts are probably fundamentally getting wrong about India's poor.
I don't think they're getting it wrong. I mean, I think there are kind of very politically motivated kind of people claiming that.
Who is claiming India does not have poor people? Who has ever claimed this, guys? Has anybody? I'm not sure. Might be some. Has some retarded BJP guy said this at some point in some random bite, and is he basing all this on that? Otherwise, who is saying this? Because the most Hindutva right-wing BJP RSS guys are all day working on integral humanism. There's so many poor people. What will they do without freebies, etc.? So who is this guy saying that there are no poor people? But so obviously no one is saying that in the first place. But why does he bring that up as a counter argument, just as a trick to get out of this jam?
Very politically motivated kind of people claiming there is no poverty in India. But I think if I spend a fair amount of time traveling in rural India, so I have a relatively first-hand view of this. I would say that's I was in.
That line does not mean anything. This is a classic RSS integral humanism line. Have you been on the ground, etc.? So I can right now bring to you 20 people from Israel who've been to Palestine who will say everything that Israel is doing in Palestine is great. So we will have to agree with them just for that reason, that they went to Palestine.
In December, I was in northern Maharashtra in the tribal belt, and see what the houses are like. I mean, I'm not saying that things haven't improved. Things have improved. You can, but if you look in Mumbai,
Things
the
have improved.
jhoparpattis are still there, right?
Oh, jhoparpattis have not improved. Now, who lives in a jhoparpatti? The person who lives in a jhoparpatti, why is it his preference to live in a jhoparpatti as opposed to a nice flat? Because he can't afford it. How will his salary go up? And after his salary goes up, by how much does a maid salary need to go up to afford a nice flat in Mumbai? Now, I'm not ignoring the massive corruption behind the high prices in Mumbai, but that's not what he's addressing or solving for. All I'm asking is, why is jhoparpatti even a problem here? Because it looks not nice, civic sense, etc. Yeah, that the only occasion that he gets to address that is apparently in the conversation of freebies. Make them a random home. Yeah, give them a flat whose electric bill they can't afford, or they don't make enough money to really sustain themselves. So give them a flat which they will sell or put up for rent and go live in a jhoparpatti again. But things have improved, but the jhoparpattis, those goddamn jhopar fucking pattis, they are still there. How can we sleep at night peacefully?
You come into Andheri and suddenly there is this set of completely falling down little. I mean, I think we are a little bit. I mean, other than people who have
No magical. Deriding China's success is different from acknowledging that China is successful. Deriding China's success implies completely ignoring what China did to get there, especially because he's on that side of the politics where he would be first in line to protest against a hypothetical GOI trying to bring in China-like policies against laborers. Therefore, he's deriding China's success. He's not acknowledging China's success.
very specific political motivations. It's hard to imagine anyone not recognizing that there's a fair amount of poverty left in India. That's not to say that things haven't improved. Things have improved vastly since, in my lifetime, vastly. The poverty I saw when, I was as a teenager, I spent a fair amount of time in villages and, in Jharkhand or something. And there, the poverty was, nobody had a, there were, people wore, one dhoti and maybe had a gamcha to put around their shoulders, but that was it. But it was really, there was a dire poverty.
What has changed about poverty and rich poor?
I'm sure their poverty of that era had nothing to do with jizya becoming poor out of having paid jizya for so many generations, for which that guy's descendants today don't get any reparations. If they do, it's at the cost of Brahmin kids today. And that poverty, if we are tracking for same lineages again, have same families owned only one dhuti since 300 BC, Chanakya, Rigved, to this modern times? Or has that particular lineage gone through ups and downs? If it has, why is a guy wearing or owning one dhoti today a proof of historical injustice against that man, historical economic injustices at least against that man? Because that's what he's implying, that because he's not discussing one single snapshot in time, he's discussing the trajectory, and the trajectory, he argues, is kind of going great in some ways. Things are improving, but poor people still exist and some people still have one dhoti. So I'm guessing that in that guy's life, nothing has improved, because he used to have one dhoti 10 years back. Now also he has one dhoti. Oh, that's not what he's arguing, by the way. He's saying that some people used to have one dhoti like 20 years, 30 years back. I'm sure their children don't have one dhoti today. Then did that guy's grandfather, great-grandfather, all of them also have one dhoti in the family? And if not so, what was the cause behind their generational wealth? And slash, what were the causes of simply the family lineage ups and downs economically? And how much of that was because of Fabian socialism in the first place?
Gap.
I think the rich poor.
Fabian socialism is not discussed at all. Like, India's poverty was a natural, most organic, most plausible, obvious consequence of colonialism. There was nothing else we could have done, We are just poor. Bound to happen. Colonialism हुआ, उसके पहले मुगल्स आए, जिन्होंने देश के साथ इतना मोहब्बत हो गया कि वो लोग फरगाना वैली के कोल्ड डेजर्ट में घुस के लौट नहीं पाए. इतना प्रेम था भारत के साथ. तो ये सब मिला के अचानक एक आदमी के पास एक धोती आ गया.
Gap has the rich have got richer relative to the poor, but the government has also the fraction of income that the government gets has gone up. GST has increased the government share. Now a lot of that money is coming from middle class people who are spending. It's not that they're coming from the rich. I mean, GST is a very, it's kind of everybody pays GST. It's not that, Ambani pays the same GST as the poorest person, more or less. Some brackets and this and that, but yeah. So therefore, it's not, but still, that money means that for the poorest people, the government is able to redistribute, and there is more redistribution now than there was before, and and the NREGA wages are high.
Oh, redistribution now is higher. Where did that extra money come from, Dr. Abhijit Banerjee? A little something called the 91 reforms, before which we were practicing Fabian socialism or simply being Soviet Union's colony. But at least vassal state, not colony. So mysteriously at some point, even with the best intentions, I'm sure, of Indira Gandhi, Nehru, all the other prime ministers who came and went for 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years, etc. All of them had the intentions, but simply couldn't give more freebies. And then now we can. And even then, I'm sure GDP, those numbers don't matter. He knows what's the sauce behind those numbers, but mysteriously, we simply can afford more freebies, guys. That's the mystery of what you learn in a Faka flat. This is pure Faka flatonomics for you.
And the jobs in construction, now I've been actually a couple of not last summer, but the summer before that, I spent a lot of time interviewing construction workers in Delhi.
वो तो असली फैक्टर है भाई कि काहे अंबानी और अमन सिंह 1% का जीएसटी देगा. Aman Singh kitna garib hai, although his DP suggests otherwise. Ambani is so rich. So people are forgetting that Ambani and our poor little Aman Singh here are not buying the same products and not in the same numbers. Then the GST percentage anyway goes up, even if it's a flat GST.
In Hyderabad, and they were getting paid, depending on your skill level, 500 a day or 350 a day, but not 50 a day. So I mean, there is clearly, and if you paid 50 a day, you wouldn't get anybody. They would stay in the village and get NEERAJAN. So there is an effect of, if you can make some reasonable amount of money in the village, why would you move to the city unless you paid substantially more? So I think there is a push pressure from the bottom, and that has meant that the earning, nobody's making the kind of salaries that people were making even 20 years ago.
So that has changed. Like, people are making.
Guys, that sentence is great for New York Times clicks and enough to rile up a few purple-haired commies. But what the fuck? The only way that sentence makes sense is if he's saying, which is very true, that inflation is way higher than the rise in your salaries. How did that inflation increase? Does inflation magically increase? Did the RBI wake up one day and decide, let's have really high inflation? Maybe that way we can show off our GDP numbers, guys. That's not what happened. DA, freebies, all that stuff is going on, contributing to the inflation every moment, each passing minute.
At the bottom, people are making more money.
Yeah. And I think that's a result of policy. I think the fact that now, for example, if you live in a village...
not just policy. Policy, in fact, has throttled what the market could have done.
And you are classified in the bottom 75% of the economy, you get PDS. You get food subsidies. And so, survival is possible. If you live in your village and you have a ration card, you can live off that. I mean, it's not that it's not wonderful. I don't want to glamorize poverty in any way. I find it reprehensible, but I still think that things are better now.
So coming back to your professor mode a little bit, okay, which is
पी भारत ने असली जगह पकड़ा है, सही पकड़े हैं पी भारत जी के what Abhijit Banerjee seemingly is arguing is that people must be employed, poor people, not tech bros, poor people must be employed in any every sector, no matter what the cost of efficiency and prosperity of the country, but their wages have to be high enough or they will not work or they shouldn't work morally, you know. Both are true and both are being claimed at the same time. But is he even arguing that people should have jobs? That's another fun discussion we'll get into later in the podcast, because you will say UBI freebies, they are fine because it's not like people become addicts, alcoholics, lazy because of not having jobs. He literally argues this, that in a way there is no social cost to sitting at home and getting freebies. But in the beginning, he says not having jobs has a social cost. That's what's going to happen. But that's not even the tech bro point. Okay, why he hates tech bros, there we will get very soon now.
is because we started that way, and you said you can teach with basic terms as well.
Yeah.
So first, teach me on, let's say, a whiteboard, like a white paper, if I have to just put it out for you.
Tamil Nadu gives free alcohol, or are all the liquor shops in Tamil Nadu owned by the government? No, I recently went to Tamil Nadu. I had to buy it out of my own money. Maybe the taxes went to DMK, but they are not giving away free alcohol. Unless there is some specific yojana for some poor people in Tamil Nadu. Of course, yeah, that might be it. Giving away free alcohol, insane. पूरा दवा दारू सब कुछ का इंतजाम हो गया. Should we ask Shubhendu for a free cigarette yojana? You know, for the poor amongst us, not for us, for the poor people. Why shouldn't poor people get free cigarettes? Why do they not have the right to get a little slightly high for 5 minutes?
What is RCT? Like, what is this thing? How would you explain it to me if I don't know anything about it? Why did you win Nobel for it?
Okay. So imagine that you want to know where
Rajtamani, another question that you should ask yourself, or you should have asked yourself before asking this question, is why did Muhammad Yunus win the Nobel? Or the better question is, why did Barack Obama win the Nobel? Why? What did he achieve when he won the Nobel? And what did he do right after?
having computers in school is these are different schools, and in these schools there are some of these have computers, some of these don't. And let's say these are the ones that have computers, and these other ones don't.
Okay.
What would your guess be about the performance of the children in these schools versus these schools?
They'll perform better because they have computers?
Or because they are in schools that can afford computers. Their parents are richer. Their parents can hire tutors. Their parents have access to online classes, and they can. So everything is correlated here. So what our RCT does is it says, if I want to study the effect of computers on children's learning, first thing I need to do is I need to compare like with like. I can't compare the schools, the Ambani school with the Bombay Municipal Corporation schools for a million reasons, not just because they have computers. So therefore, what I should do is I should do an experiment where I randomly choose schools. So maybe I'll choose this one, and then I'll randomly choose this one, and I'll give them computers, and I'll leave the rest without the computer. And then then these are comparable because I chose them without I blinded myself and picked them out of a hat.
Now, on this study, he's not wrong. The fact is that, objectively speaking, having computers in that school will improve education for those students, hands down. The problem is the cost again, and whether that is the priority. Because, like, he's obsessed with that idea of improving. Are things improving at 5% or by 50%, etc.? In that same way, the cost of those computers versus improving their education, what's the proportionality there? How much do I need to spend on computers to get what kind of improvement in their education? On that metric, AC defeats any technology, hands down. The priority is AC in classrooms because heat in general and the mind-fucking heat of India, that is the biggest reason people won't be able to concentrate in classrooms. People won't have the will to focus in classrooms, especially poor kids who don't have an environment of studying and education in their families. So ACs. And more importantly, this is more of a philosophical tangent really, on which he has gone himself, that yes, throw 10 rupees at a problem, that problem goes away or decreases. Therefore, let's throw 100 rupees at that problem so that that problem never happens ever again to anyone else. That's a socialist idea. The problem is, as a society, you will maybe able to have to live with that problem. There will be some people who will argue that, no, just let me spend 100 rupees on this and then this problem is gone forever. First of all, that has never happened. Even if that problem goes away, that will create a chain effect of many other problems, because you are hyper focusing on just one group, the poor people. And there you spend all your money on their computers.
So there's no systematic bias. So then I can compare them and say that, well, is it really true that learning is higher in the schools that have computers than the ones that don't?
Yeah.
So that's the extremely basic idea. Then, of course, there's a lot of technique and statistical nuance that you have to deal with. But if you want to, so the basic idea is exactly this idea that if you just compare naively, you get biased outcomes. You say that the children in a money school are, they learn better because they have computers, but in fact, that it's not true. So this is what we are guarding against.
And what could be one statistical nuance?
So for example, suppose I chose these 4 schools to have computers, okay? But only 3 of them actually got the computers. The computer delivery to this one failed. What do I do in that situation? Does the experiment have to fail, or is there a way to deal with that nuance? And the answer is, if I say that I'm going to compare the schools that were originally assigned to have computers with the schools that were assigned not to have computers, that's still a valid comparison. I know that's not all of them got it, but I can scale by that. So that's a statistical nuance, if you like.
Got it. Good. And what, if you have to explain me in this way, what would be economics for you? How would you explain economics?
Economics takes very seriously the idea that you have to understand people's motivations in interpreting the effect of anything. So if I want to look at what happens in a particular situation.
Right. Behavioral economics. We are not going to judge people based on their actions and their purchase patterns. We are going to guess what's going on in their minds.
Then I can either say people have, they are from this caste and therefore they behave in this way. Or I can say that, but the world is always changing and they're also looking at other opportunities. And therefore I need to understand how people's behavior interacts with.
Is the world always changing? Why aren't there any Nobel laureates called Abhijit Shapui or Abhijit Dolui? Oh, because we didn't do enough reservations, guys.
With the market situation or the institutional situations. And economics takes that second step very seriously, that individual choice and collective outcomes are related not in a mechanical way. They're not just because, I am from a particular caste, I won't do a certain behavior. I'll do what I do also depends on, what government programs are available, what kinds of schools are available, what is the macroeconomic situation, can I borrow easily or not? All of these things matter. So economists take the fact that people are inside this complex of, related but distinct institutional movements and make active choices. They take that very seriously. So I would say that's what makes economics a very distinct way of thinking about anything. So when I think about the computer in the school, to go back to that example, I naturally ask, why is it that these schools have computers and those schools don't? And then I have a theory of that, which makes me suspicious of comparing them. Why am I suspicious? I'm suspicious because I know that these schools probably don't have a computer just randomly. They probably have a computer because their parents are rich, or the government is particularly focusing on these schools, or there's some particular privilege is there. So that asking that question is what makes me an economist.
But guys, any RSS guy, BJP guy getting angry with Abhijit Banerjee has no right. anybody who remotely has any sympathies for integral humanism is not getting what he's saying. Everything he's saying absolutely makes sense in the world of integral humanism.
I'm very much interested in the underlying causal mechanisms that cause these differences, and that allows me to then think of what's the right experiment.
Because also broadly, you see, let's say, let's just for argument's sake, for just right now, let's presume that Abhijit Banerjee is an honest actor and he's coming up with these solutions just because he's thinking of the poor, etc. And a fiscal conservative would argue that a poor person's life is better off in a more free society, economically speaking. And he's saying, hand those people some money and then their life is better. So we are both talking about poor people in this context. But the way he's approaching the problem is ignoring the history, which is kind of a very practical way to go about it if you're a bureaucrat, that you can't talk of social reform once you're in a position of power where you're actually supposed to solve problems and not hypothesize about what social changes to bring in order to solve that problem. In that position, you have to work with the world as it is. You have to just say, it is what it is. Here is a problem. I'm working in a particular department under a particular ministry. This is my job to fix this, and I will seek whatever remedy there is to fix this. Doesn't that also sound exactly like integral humanists? Where is the difference? And on specific observations, premises, all of that is exactly the same.
Interesting. And then you said on the briefing call that you would explain Indian economics with the help of a pressure cooker.
Pressure cooker is a good example of something it's a technology we use a lot more in India than in most of the world. It's really, and Indians have adopted this technology, even though it's actually a very interesting technology. It's the fact that pressure raises the boiling point, and therefore it allows things to cook much faster, is an idea that has been around.
Well, Aritrojit, you arbitrarily set up a cutoff portion cutoff line for upper classes at any given, which has to be arbitrary. But in that way, many things are arbitrary, like adult franchise. Why are you adult at 18 and not 17 years and 363 days? That kind of a thing. But in the end, it will be arbitrary. But then we are talking about an experiment here. So privilege is whatever he decides, somewhere around the upper middle classes.
For a while, but still, if you look in
not what he decides, internationally agreed upon metrics and standards.
Regular US household, they wouldn't have a pressure cooker till 20 years ago when in some sense the Instapot, which is actually a pressure cooker, was introduced. But even then, that wasn't Instapot went out of business. Actually, it's not vastly popular.
Yeah.
And it has something to do with two things. One is our lifestyle, that we make slow cooked what were traditionally slow cooked, like dal, and we need to melt things, which is relatively unusual in the US or in Germany or something. The second thing is that we are poor, and we are especially we are energy poor.
And why? Because we haven't done China-like things, or USA-like things, or Luxembourg-like things.
Poor country. We are,
or even Germany-like things.
Always conscious of the fact that energy prices, we are very sensitive to global energy prices. So we are always going to be, worrying about, can I afford to cook this, this dal, but it's going to be, this chana will take a long time to boil. So should I do it? And what a pressure cooker does is it makes that much more energy efficient. So it goes the pressure cooker is a very good example of where preferences and the market interact to define a particular style of cooking, which is very Indian. In Indian, you read a recipe, they'll always say, you put it in the pressure cooker, you wait till 3.
Hear me? Yeah. So guys, breaking news, guys, different people have different choices and tastes in different countries. And apparently the market does not know that. Market doesn't cater to specific needs and purchase patterns of specific places, guys. It's brand new information, guys. We don't use pressure cookers, we use pots.
and then you're done.
Yeah.
That's you try finding that in a Chinese recipe or a Spanish recipe. It just doesn't exist. So it is very much that the fact that that's there is a very interesting interaction of energy prices, poverty, and taste.
Yeah. But the pressure cooker became popular just because of energy efficiency in the country.
We used to have something called Ickmic cooker before the pressure cooker,
Okay.
which was I'm actually not old enough to have used one or seen one, but I think there was a prior thing where they would at least cook, and I've seen that as a child. I saw that when you cook rice, you put in a little dabba inside the rice, you put some sabzi, so that when the rice cooks, the same heat cooks the sabzi. And so that idea is, I think the Ickmic cooker basically was a way of using that structure. So there's all this thinking about how to economize on energy. And this has been a while. I mean, I'm saying last 100 years, Ickmic cooker goes back to the 1930s or something. So I think these things were, Ickmic comes from economic, by the way. It's exactly this idea that it was an economic way to cook.
And what these things has to do with economics?
So one of the
samosa, laddu, chips,
and mithai. So one idea that I think is very prevalent even in our policy conversations in India.
Oh, this is his Rajasthan experiment, right?
I mostly say unfortunately, is being judgmental about
the research of this situation is discussed in the book he wrote right before writing his research, which won him the Nobel.
For the poor. And you hear this a lot. You say that, she has no money, but she's always eating samosas or something, or having chai. And I always thought that's backwards. That in some sense, because we have such fulfilling lives, we are able to, it's much easier to resist temptations when you have fulfilled lives. It's easy to be disciplined when I know that I'm getting lots of rewards. When you think your life is a bit dreary, you clean people's dishes.
P. Bharat, not to give you a spoiler about tech bros, but that's not important because fuel providers are rich Arab sheikhs. Therefore, it's not important. Therefore, cooking must be made efficient even if they become poorer. But of course, ignoring all the poor people who delivered the fuel.
Some pleasure there has to be some space for pleasure. Otherwise, life isn't worth living. And so I think fundamentally, these chips, why are chips popular? Chips popular because, they're very easy to transport. They're available. If you go to a village in rural Udaipur district, okay, which is, once you get out of Udaipur and you go 50 kilometers, you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I spend lots of time in those places. And in those villages, you'll get Parle-G.
RSS Integral Humanism talking points in better English.
Bag of chips. These are durable. So they're things that are easy to, they provide a certain amount of quick satisfaction. They're cheap to transport, so cheap. Therefore, they stay cheap. If you try to provide, this burfi there, that would be much more expensive. The burfis don't travel well. So you want to. So there's a logic to why these makai ki roti and some sabzi, and it gets tedious, and especially children. I think it's the children often say, "This is I had that every day." So mother then says, the father then says, "Chalo, I'll get you a bag of chips." I think those are very important for survival. So if you don't, and in that sense, I'm very much against being judgmental about what poor people do. I think they have a hard enough life without us criticizing them.
True.
Where did this sentiment of judging poor people come from? Y'all judge them for having no civic sense and living in jhoparpattis, I guess. We know it's happening because they are poor and they were never told otherwise. They have been celebrated for being poor.
True. So they usually consume more chips and more samosas because of indulgent pleasure?
I think not more, because of course we can afford anything, but for them it's much more important.
And it's like a short escape for them?
Yes.
And what's with laddu and mithai?
They're the same. Laddu and mithai, I'm just saying
it's much more expensive.
It's much more expensive, so it's a much bigger treat. They might actually give it to the god. Say, you'll buy one mithai and you give it to the god, and then you share it among your family. Then you've done some, so you got some punya and you also got some mithai.
And what if you wrote something about this somewhere?
It's a good one. It's a nice one.
Why is guava so pyara?
Exactly.
What is in
Guava, by the way, it's called pyara in Bengali.
guava?
So guava, turns out, has is a very good source of bioaccessible iron. So the problem with iron is partly that many things have iron, but they're not very bioaccessible, meaning they don't, even if your body gets it, it expels it basically. So you don't actually absorb the iron. The advantage of guava is it's a very good source of bioaccessible iron. And we have a huge anemia problem. We're like, with a few other countries, we are kind of where the anemia in the world is.
Especially women.
And so it was the guava it was more that it was a example of some very simple thing we can do to help with this anemia issue. That there is not a matter of
how anemia issue and guava and economics it's related.
Well, anemia is a huge productivity issue. There's evidence showing that anemic people are 20% less productive. Okay, so big gains from anemia, solving anemia. So that's one part of the economics. Economics productivity is like, if you read the business press, it's like number one issue. No? So there's nothing so surprising about. And the second thing is, I think that goes back to what I said before about understanding behavior. So what's nice about guava is it's available everywhere. It's really like one of these things that grows in most villages. You don't have to, and it's tasty. And so people are willing to eat it without really, you don't have to, it's not that this special saag that you have to eat or this laddu that has made with this and that and the other. It's much more difficult to implement when it's something that people intrinsically don't. But if you tell people that, eat more guavas, this is still easy. And I think that's the connection with what I was saying with the economics, which is understanding how do we deal with that? People have certain behavioral patterns, and they will, if you give them a very difficult challenge, you have to go to the city and buy this thing and regularly eat it. Some will do it, but a lot won't. But if you say कि गांव में प्यारा मिलता है, आप हर रोज एक खा लेना, perhaps a lot more people will do it.
True. And why will earnings go 15% up?
Because anemia just undermines work. Anemia, your body doesn't absorb oxygen, so you get tired. It's very simple. Iron studies of that.
Got it. And what is the S-trap curve of a poverty curve?
So
this
nice. So think about somebody. Okay. Think about nice.
This graph is from 2011. Outside the poverty trap, income today, income in future, poverty trap zone, outside the poverty trap.
So think about somebody, who has extremely low income. When you have extremely low income, you're tired all the time.
We are going to start this discussion, of course, by ignoring what made him so poor to begin with, even if it means suggesting solutions that seem awfully similar to like the policies that made him so poor in the first place. Okay, we're going to ignore that because we are practical people. We have been on the ground. How many villages have you been to, Shayan and fucking Thomas? Well, so we are going to work with the world as it is, not how we wish the world to be. So yes, even though that guy became poor because of socialism, trust me, now if we do just a bit more of it, we are going to see better days.
We talked about anemia, but even just not having enough calories means you're tired. Or I give you maybe an example, I believe more. Suppose you want to start a business, but a business where you have a shop. Maybe you can have a shop. If you go to slums all over in India, you see that there are lots of shops. People basically take part of their front room and put a wall and put a shelf, and then they put some stuff on it, and so you are little kirana shop. Typical, absolutely. But maybe you can do all that without a lot of capital. But if you don't have any capital, you can't put anything on the shelves, and then nobody's going to come to your shop. It's a waste of time. So that means that the productivity of...
Guys, what a disastrous situation, do you know? A poor guy in India cannot start his own shop. Is that the India you want to live in? Where not everybody is rich enough to start his own business. And without the harms of socialism. Just because Indians in general suck. India as a general, I think, country as a state sucks. Therefore, we are mysteriously in a situation randomly out of the blue where poor people don't have enough money to start a shop. Poor people have to work as laborers, as small-time truck drivers, even Uber drivers and stuff. Can you think of how evil that is? He doesn't have money to start a shop. Isn't that the end of his life? He can't open a shop, guys, in his Jhoparpatti. How will he survive?
Your investment actually goes up very fast as you get more and more investment. Okay. So what the idea of the S shape is that when you're very poor, going from being able to stock 2 packets of biscuits to 6 packets of biscuits is still pointless. Nobody's come to your shop for the 6 packets of biscuits. But if you go to biscuits plus some other chips per mixture plus other toothbrush plus toothpaste plus shampoo, then people will come. So the return to capital is steeply increasing for a while. You have more capital, you can just your shop. You have a shop, but your shop is worthless till you have enough. So that's the idea of an S shape. Is that for a while, at the if you think of the left tail of the S, a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more doesn't do much. So you give a lot. You have to get a substantial amount before the business really flourishes. Because till then, it's nobody's going to come to your shop to see if you have the 4th packet of biscuit, but they will come if you have many things and it's attractive. And when I get there, I'm going to think of what I'm going to buy, but it's a nice, attractive shop. So it's very much this idea that as we get further up the S kind of goes up steeply for a while. And so that's, if you make more investments, you get for a while the returns. And of course, then at some point, if you have a small store, there's no point investing more. Yeah. So then it becomes the top of the S where it kind of flattens off.
So you're saying that if you have to get someone out of poverty, giving them small amount of money probably every quarter or every year is not going to make significant difference. Giving them one shot lump sum money is going to make the difference.
Yeah, I did an experiment in Kenya where people got either I guess monthly small amount of money, or they got all of that at the beginning. So then both of this continued for
guys. If you are too poor to afford a bike or your car, etc., or any personal vehicle, do you know that you have to go to office in a public vehicle? What if the government gave you a free bike so that you could cut down your travel time between offices, between your home and your office, and that increases your productivity? So why not should the government give you free bikes, free motorcycles? Why isn't it right now giving that stuff? Because by Banerjee's metrics, it's exactly the same, unless we are not talking about poor people according to his definition. We're talking about tech bros, whom he hates according to me. And this is not the tech bro argument even now. He's going to come to that even later in the podcast, which is going to be hilarious. But although you are poorer in comparison to Adani, etc., but since you are richer than the guy who apparently lives in the middle of nowhere, somewhere around Udaipur, therefore, your productivity can go fuck itself, and you will have to go hanging in a bus to office. You're not going to get a free bike just to increase your productivity by 15%. But those poor people are.
I'll actually
out of your taxes. Let me rile up some people as well.
Say it in 2 steps. So this continued so the monthly small amounts of money continued for 2 years. The lump sum that they got was equivalent to that 2-year amount.
Okay. What was it? Like, what was the monthly?
I think it was, so 83 cents a day but at Kenyan real exchange rate. So the amount, it's
what
small.
Would be like a monthly in dollar terms?
Would it be? It would be something like maybe $8-9 a month.
Okay, so like 800 rupees.
Yeah,
somewhere around that.
Yeah, a month
into 24.
Into 24, or the equivalent in
one lump sum.
One lump sum, and you see that the lump sum generates many more businesses than the. So this is a randomized.
Now, I don't know how to Gallowar. He's saying, how does his labor theory of value align with value generation by seated shopkeepers? The bigger question is, Gallowar, how does labor theory of value apply to OnlyFans? The even bigger question is, since he argues that standard of life has not really gone up, sometimes he says it has gone up, sometimes he says it hasn't gone up because of the air we breathe, which was much purer back when we didn't have any construction, everywhere, all around, and roads and buses and vehicles and Western style capitalism. So you see integral humanism through and through. But longing for our days in the villages where every bad thing used to happen. But poorer women of the more, let's say, sluttier persuasion, if I may say so. Earlier on, their debauchery would be limited to maybe screwing around with more than one man in one neighborhood or a village. A person, a woman, a poor woman of such persuasion today can have 2 million followers on Instagram by simply showing off half-naked dancing videos of his 8-year-old daughter or herself in nightgowns and stuff, and have subscription options. Where's labor theory of value, and where is poverty increasing and rich getting richer and richer and richer? Her market today is the entire world. Now, that has so many repercussions in so many other situations. Up until maybe 1 decade back, the sexual marketplace that you would be accessing, the pool, would be girls and boys you knew around you. Then you went for a job and stuff, that changed. And now every guy, his pool is closed off to pretty much his work, his college circle. And if at all he is one of those absolute chat bro guys who do have a good physique, do dress up well, and are in fact photogenic, they can drum up some support for themselves on social media, because the data on that is absolutely overwhelmingly clear that life is much tougher for men in these situations than for women. Then, on the other hand, a woman with in the exact same profession, in the exact same salary slab, has practically access to everybody in the world because of her being a woman, and rich people from everywhere, Dubai, UAE, USA, all the black market money, all that can come to that woman. She may or may not be poor, but if you are poor and you are of that persuasion, you are getting the benefits of this. And it's not just that one woman or that one kind of woman, not just that one gender. Everybody is getting benefits out of social media in these ways. And where is labor theory of value in that? How does it even apply? And where are our concerns of rich getting richer and the poor not getting richer enough? And where's the conversation of that woman needing a shopkeeper, a shop to sit at in order to survive?
For trial, some villages got this, small amount. Some people. What's more remarkable is that some people were given a promise that they will get that small amount for 12 years, and the lump sum was only for the value of 2 years, and it still generated more businesses than the 12-year amount.
Why?
Because people, exactly what you say, what will people, you give them small amounts, they'll never be able to, either they're very disciplined and they save up and save up and save up, or there's no way to turn it into a business. So they buy whatever, they repair.
Oh, even when you get free money, you have to do things like save up and save up and save up. Can you believe that? Poor people have to save up and save up and save up to become richer and grow a successful business. How unfair. Can you believe that? Is that a world you really want to live in? Is that the India you grew up in, guys?
They spend it in whatever way that makes sense for them, but assuming it's very hard for them to build a business. Whereas you give them a lump sum, they know that this money will go.
It's very hard, you see. It's very hard. As opposed to not just one bag of free money from somebody else's pocket, maybe 5 bags of free money from somebody else's pocket. And that's when you don't have to save up or work hard. That's when a business just happens.
If they don't turn it into a business, they turn it into a business.
But then, has it ever happened that if you give lump sum money to somebody for no reason, just for free, they end up misusing it?
Sure.
Guys, we are halfway in the podcast. This is where things come crashing down wholesale. Raj Shamani begins pushing back just a little out of basics of economics that he knows for being an entrepreneur himself. Abhijit Banerjee was saying no that uh, he knows stuff. He is above buying kolhapuri from Prada, etc. But one thing he hasn't done, since he has gone to villages and known directly, seen through his own eyes, the poverty-stricken, deathly lives, hellish lives of poor people in Rajasthan. So he's more obviously bigger of an authority and a say in this, but he hasn't run a business as far as I know. Raj Shamani has. He has 18 million subscribers. And that guy says, but sir, that sounds weird. Won't they be misusing it? With this degree of push-up, now get ready to witness all of his argument premises that he spewed until now starting to come off. Every layer is going to get peeled off like an onion by himself. Raj Shamani is not going to go on pushing him further and further. He's just going to casually ask, but what about this? And Abhijit Banerjee panics and pretty much is flabbergasted for having received the first pushback in probably 15 years.
Some people will, but I think the most striking fact is
No, let's listen to this section in normal speed. Check out his reactions.
if they don't turn it into a business, they turn it into a business.
But then, has it ever happened that if you give lump sum money to somebody for no reason, just for free, they end up misusing it?
Sure.
Guys, there is one more layer to this. Lump sum money for free, I don't think loans should be included that in that, obviously, because yes, you are getting one certain bag of money to start your business, in which apparently you don't have to save up and save up and save up or work hard. Just that 5 bags of money helps you. But you are going to pay it back. But free bags of money from the government is not the same as free government or free 5 bags of money from a charity. That is also important. Charities must be getting into this game, because charity is not a faceless organization with whom you don't have a relationship ever again and is a no-name entity for you, and you're completely shameless about it. You think it's your right. It's your right. Like every BJP supporter or BJP MLA goes around saying, like just a few days back, we were checking out a Bengali debate and Taliganj MLA Papi Adhikari was saying Annapurna Bhandar, etc. These are women's rights. So if they are rights, we will have to end up asking, do those people from whom you are stealing that kind of money for giving to someone else, do they leave the country or not? Here something hilarious is going to happen again. Abhijit Banerjee is going to say, no, you can't just leave the country like that. There are huge costs to that as well. Later, much later, almost at the end of the interview, he's going to say, you yourself were saying, he's saying to Raj Shamani, that people will leave if businesses are taxed too much. Maybe that's why we can't do that and have revenue much higher than we do right now. Okay. But check this part out once again.
If they don't turn it into.
So in this context, all I'm saying is bags of money on its own is not as harmful if it comes from charity, because that charity does not give you that money randomly as well, or should not, or will not. You know that charity, you have maybe been part of that spiritual organization. Spiritual organizations and their charities must take up this mantle, not the government, because then it breeds entitlement. With the charity, it will never breed entitlement. The government is so different on so many levels and in so many ways from a charity that it can't be ignored. That faceless entity thing, you don't, because the government is, some people have tried to remedy that, of course, like Mamta Modi, they explicitly mentioned, see, this is my face. I am the guy giving it to you, giving this free stuff to you. Therefore, obey me, listen to me, vote for me. I got you a bunch of ration and free Lokri Bhandar money and your startup cash. So vote for me. But in general, by large, people will think, it's the government. who's giving. We have been receiving it forever. What's new in this? That's not what's going to happen if he takes that same amount from a charity. That distinction is very important, and he does not address these distinctions at all.
A business, they turn it into a business.
But then, has it ever happened that if you give lump sum money to somebody for no reason, just for free, they end up misusing it?
Sure, some people will, but I think the most striking fact is that you don't really see. There's lots of studies of this, of people getting lump sums or getting free money of some kind, and there's no evidence that it generates more laziness or more drinking and all the things that people imply.
I'm sure that study has not been done in West Bengal
There's evidence on all of them, and none
or Madhya Pradesh.
of them happen.
But you've junked this theory, right?
I've junked it for years, and the evidence keep mounting that it's not true.
Tell me, explain me if somebody is hearing this for the first time. Why do you think or believe that giving free money to people or giving freebies to a lot of poor people is not making them lazy? It's actually good for them.
Yes, it's good for them. In fact, there is
It's not ruining them.
Yes, there's a study before USAID was shut down. They did a meta-analysis, which is like when you combine 140 different studies and looked at the effect of that on work. And they found that people who get freebies, let's use the popular word, work slightly more, not much more, but slightly more, not less. The important thing is that they don't work less, they work more. And that's what we found also. When you give people, in all of these studies, there's no...
I'm sure there's no statistical fallacy in those things at all, because he's a stand-up guy when it comes to statistics. So we have no reason to distrust him at all. More importantly, again, are we tracking the same people for a long period?
Not less. The important thing is that they don't work less, they work more. And that's what we found also. When you give people...
So it's just a mystery that we have unemployment and empty vacant positions in jobs. That's just a coincidence. There's no mystery behind that, right?
In all of these studies, there's no evidence.
So if your freebie is higher than what you could have made in the market, you are not going to be lazy. You're still going to work very hard for that lesser salary.
That they work less.
Why?
Why? Because I think we misunderstand what motivates work. I think being depressed and thinking that your life is basically, it sucks, is not a way to get people enthusiastic about working.
My God. We are now going to spout absolute pop psychology from purple-haired commies. So psychology, guys. Now, if at all we are going to get into psychology, why not look at the fact that it's just depression which often does what he's describing. Oh, my life is bad. Why get out of it? Let's get into alcohol more. That is very prevalent among poor people, and not because of poverty, because many other people are also addicted and depressed. And that person his depression is going to get cured by free government money. If only Freud knew. What does Freud have to say on this? Is it his claim also that free government money can solve depression? But what people also ignore is that there is something called high functioning depression, which is more common among men, especially people who have been fathers for decades and stuff. You will see those men who have kind of given up on life and hopes and dreams. They are just the quiet workhorse in the family. They go about their way, just working and working and working, because he kind of has given up on a good, nice word from his wife every now and then, his son or daughter being proud or appreciating his work. He's just depressed as fuck, but being a workhorse in the family is the only thing that makes him go. That does not mean he has no depression. That does not mean he's fucking happy with his life. And that does not mean that happiness was created by government freebies. He's just a high fucking depressed guy. Highly functional depressed guy. So if we get into psychology, Abhijit Banerjee has more minds to get through.
Not less. The important thing is that they don't work less. They work.
I will take a pee break, guys, and you won't be able to see me. But I will turn on my speakers, so I'll be able to hear Abhijit Banerjee while I'm peeing.
More. And that's what we found also. When you give people, in all of these studies, there's no evidence, that they work less.
Why?
Why? Because I think we misunderstand what motivates work. think being depressed and thinking that your life is basically, it sucks, is not a way to get people enthusiastic about working. When you give them an opportunity, they say, look, you can do, now you can have a better life maybe. They are more enthusiastic about trying things. I think we just don't understand.
But do they not get used to that, hey, because I'm getting things for free, I should just be this?
I'll give you an example. In West Bengal, we did a study now 19 years ago. There were women who were extremely poor. So poor that the poor people in the villages, we asked them, who's poor in your village? And they would say, those people are poor. So we did a mapping and we found they identified the poor. So these were people who, the very poor people who live in West Bengal villages, all thought were poor. They were given an asset, usually, some got cows, some got goats, some got some trinket to sell in the local villages. They could choose. They chose whatever they wanted. And then they were given some handholding. Somebody from the organization came and said, yes, you can do it. And that went on for a year. We now look at them 17 years later. We have data for them 17 years after. So we've been following them. 17 years after, the people who got that asset are 40% richer. They're still richer. It's not that and this asset was given to them once. Remember, that's why it connects to your question. They were given the asset in 2007. Okay, 2024. And we see that they are 40% richer, their consumption is higher, their income is higher, their children are doing other things, their lives are transformed. It's more that I think people underestimate how hard it is it's not that everybody does that. Of course, some people, whatever their mental illness, I mean, there are lots of reasons why not everybody will do it.
Yeah, they'll get drinking problems, they'll get some stuff, but that's going to be very small.
But on average, the effects are dramatically positive. I mean,
why do you think is that? Like, why do you think? Actually, there are two questions to this.
Okay.
One is, why do you think people who have been given free cows or free business opportunity or free money to start something, why are they more motivated and eventually in 10, 12, 15 years, they do better rather than just getting addicted to the free money or free stuff and misusing it? That's the first question. And then second is, if there is enough evidence that people who have been given freebies, they do better, why do a large section of society believe that they'll get addicted to free money?
Because they are dumb Hindutva fascist libertarians, guys. That's why. But broadly speaking, guys, notice the difficulty in arguing these points, okay? Because regardless of whatever you all spout in my live chat, none of you, unless you want to lose complete credibility for your entire life, none of you are going to be able to say the things you are saying here or the stuff I'm saying by being in any position, in any legitimate profession publicly ever. Only in your friendly discussions behind closed doors. If that is the situation, if everyone is going to go about their lives that way, cowering down in front of socialist arguments, then what's going to happen? What's going to change? Because his core vibe is that I'm in favor of the poor people, and you can't deny that. Randomly handing out some money to any poor person right now improves his life, maybe forever, maybe his lineage, what it would have turned out, all of that changes. So you randomly pick some random poor people from somewhere in some states and give them some money. Their lives have improved. Why are you against this? The only way you are going to be against Abhijit Banerjee, logically, conceptually, is if you are opposed to the idea of equality. And how many of you have the balls to say that not anonymously? Especially when you are not just a random guy on YouTube comment sections and Twitter. When you are actually a man of family and respect in society. Will you have the balls then? I hope you do, because this is the first time in a long time we are having these conversations. So by the time you all become respected people in your own professions, wherever the fuck you are, in whatever profession, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I hope we have an army of people unashamedly, unapologetically, fearlessly saying inequality is not the goal. It should not be the goal. We are in favor of the poor because we want the poor to get richer without focusing on jealousy.
And be lazy and then giving money is not good.
The first part I'm going to answer quite specifically.
Okay.
And the second one, I'm going to say something and then speculate a little.
Okay.
So the first part is, I would say, for a lot of people, it goes back to that S-shaped curve we discussed. It's the fact that, it's not that they were sitting there waiting for, okay, I get some free money, I'm going to go on vacation. They were hoping that they get a chance in life. A lot of people want to do things in their life. And, you're someone.
First of all, he's completely ignoring psychology, and whether someone's wish to work depends on their depression or not. But secondly, if a bit of money is all they needed to cure their situation of hopelessness, then why are so many people using whatever money they have on alcohol and bidi? Wouldn't it make sense if they saved up all that money to get ahead in life? Oh, Abhijit Banerjee is opposed to that. Poor people shouldn't have to save and save and save. What an anti-humanity argument. What an anti-humanity premise for this entirety of this category and genre of economics. But he's on the side of the poor. And BJP, RSS, brass agree with him. Every political party agrees with him on all this. Every legit intellectual agrees with all these premises. What will we do? Because, see, I believe the biggest achievement that has, biggest significant development that has happened, most significant development that has happened out of BJP coming to power, staying in power, is the mass level mind-changing narrative drilling in that has happened in the social media world, where nationalism, Hindutva, these words are cool. Criticizing Muslim kings of the past are okay now. This is a huge victory. This has not happened because of the government, but because of the government's presence, because they would not go after certain academics and intellectuals. And most of the stuff that is believed by today's Hindutva youngsters, people with no voice or some voice in the urban spaces, in social media and stuff, let's say it's probably 50-50 or 60-40 in their list of arguments. 40% being pure Australia is Australia horseshit, and 60% maybe is actually great stuff that was necessary for them to learn. They do know now. And that is a victory of simply organic right-wing discourse on social media. Our keyboard army has achieved this. So on that topic, in that same way, is it possible that social media keyboard warriors take this up? Because the government didn't give validation to any of those viewpoints by appointing academics or some big research on the things that have now been popularized by Desai Deepak, Sanjeev Sanyal, right? Anand Ranganathan. So whatever happened was completely organic, and it's going to survive BJP because it's organic. Can we argue or come across as arguing against the poor and still make these truly pro-poor arguments? Because there seems to be no way out of this insanity. Everyone is convinced of these lowly, catchy, cool sentences. Oh, a Porter helmet is there, sponsorship. I'm sure some guy who could have gotten some big grant from the government could have set up Porter as a company, but he couldn't. That's the evils of capitalism.
Who's done something in your life? You know that you didn't come just from the sense that, okay, this is programmed into me. It was a choice. You wanted to do something. And
চন্দ্রকান্ত দাস, তুমি কতক্ষণ আগে এসো লাইভ স্ট্রিমে? আমি কি ইকোনমিক্স এর বেসিক্স গুলো লাস্ট 5 মিনিটে মিস করেছি না লাস্ট 2 ঘন্টা 3 মিনিটে মিস করেছি?
I think, why would we think poor people are any different from us? So if you give them an opportunity to give a better future for their children, better future for themselves, to live in a house that's, nice house, why would they just say that, no, I should just go drink? I mean, just this, why would that be the psychological model that we believe in? That's my answer to the first part of the first question. Second question, so there is actually now fair amount of policy traction. So in Bihar, the GVK, which is part of the Labor Ministry, but it's a I guess maybe a semi-governmental organization which implements social programs.
Okay.
They implemented this program I described to you, which is the one of giving cows, etc., which is called the graduation.
Acha. So, according to Chandrakanta Das, who is speaking in Bengali in the middle of a live English live stream for some reason, he's saying, I've gotten all my basics of economics wrong from the very beginning of the live stream. So, give a few examples, maybe 2, 3 will do.
Program, bizarrely enough. But that program, they implemented, I think, for 1 lakh families. And with a part of that sample, we did a randomized control trial. And it's vastly successful. Dramatically successful also. So my view is that there is now some policy traction. When you look at how difficult it is to keep going back to people and trying to support them, I think people understand that that's part of the answer. The last question is why? Because I think people partly people need to feel that their success is fully earned, and so these poor people they
will feel their success is fully earned when they get unearned money handed to them from somebody else's pocket. And I'm missing the basics of economics.
Didn't earn it. I earned it. In fact, we don't recognize that a huge part of our success is always luck. We were born into the right kind of family. I was born into a family of professors. My grandfather was a school teacher. My great-grandfather was a school teacher. We had books all over the house. So the fact that I can read and write and understand things is not an accident of my genius. It was just luck. It was luck. I was
luck. Yeah, being Banerjee has nothing to do with it, I'm sure.
Born in the right place. I was, my parents encouraged me they discussed ideas with me. Well, my father would.
Oh, I see. Culture in the family, inside the home, inside the bedroom and the kitchen, that matters. The discussion in the dining table matters. And we can't solve that with reservations. What a surprise.
Give me math puzzles and we would discuss them.
Math puzzles. I am sure many rickshaw pullers will give their kids math puzzles if only he gets some 5 bags of free money from somebody else's pocket to set up businesses. You see, I am missing basics of economics.
All of this cultural capital is luck.
Yeah.
And I don't think of myself as being a genius. I think of myself as being someone was at the right place at the right time. And I benefited from it. I think people underestimate how difficult.
Yes, Mr. Banerjee. Bondo Upadhyay. That at least 1,000 years, maybe 1,000 years, especially because he doesn't look very Austroasiatic. Okay, let's say 800 years. 800 years of cultural capital that he has in his lineage is going to be replaced by 5 bags of money today at the hands of a rickshaw puller. Or maybe he will argue that no, it can't be. That's why he'll need that 5 bags of money, Lokir Bhandar, Annapurna Bhandar, free ration, Juva Bhata, then reservations, and only then can we hope to have an equitable society. Equitable does not mean equal, where all wealth is equal. It's just a fair start. Everybody's finally at the same starting line.
It is for the poor to get out of where they are. It's just how much pressure is on them, and they, in reverse, they give themselves too much credit.
And why do you think rich people, they don't do much charity? They don't actually give free people.
Where the fuck? What the Guys, which rich people is he talking about? Trinamool Gundas who made 1,200 crores in 15 years. Which, even Arup বিশ্বাস has huge, donated a lot to local temples. Who is this rich person who doesn't give enough to charity? And that's why the government must tax him. Holy
shit. A lot of people don't. And I asked this question specifically to Bill Gates as well. And I asked him that when you go ask for money or probably just spend time with people with a lot of money, why there are just few tech billionaires who are ready to give away their entire wealth versus the conglomerate with accumulated wealth over years and years and years of money, and they're not able to give money so easily. What's the reason?
I think sadly, I think a lot of it is I have it. Why will I? I find it deeply disturbing. And this is not everybody, obviously. There are people who actually genuinely are committed to the poor, and Bill Gates is an excellent example. He takes, I think,
I'm not going to comment on this section of the video. You all just listen to this section very carefully in just the next 1 or 2 minutes maybe, and make up your own mind.
Particularly, I think, laudable about his example is that he not only gave his money, he gave his attention. And that's a very valuable thing.
Hmm.
He's a very, very thoughtful man, and he gave his intellectual investment to this project. So, and I fully credit him for that. So I think it's also that partly people don't get. So I think what gets understood is that it's also exciting to do these things, to solve problems. And I think a lot of people haven't also got that taste. So a lot of it is also about, feeling that this is also a remarkable project. It's not, and I think that here when they do charity, it's also that people haven't yet got this idea that, I'm going to actually, this is going to give meaning to my life. And I think there are people, of course, who do that, or really.
More rich people give less money.
But
there are a few who give a lot.
Because I think they also feel that, it's not exciting for them, and why will I? And there's all this nonsense about this is going to just be bad for the poor. I really think this conversation is important, because I hope people really look at the data. I've been looking at the data.
First of all, if they're paying taxes, why will they give to the poor anyway? Where are those taxes going? Yeah, maybe a autobahn that he drives on in India, right? Full of cows and potholes. But other than that, his taxes are going to the poor anyway.
And I don't think I'm a pushover. I think part of the reason why I'm successful is that I'm known for being quite careful about these things. So, and I would say I'm not, and I know that the evidence is very clear that this is not going to, ruin the lives of the poor. So they tell themselves these stories also. That's why the stories are damaging.
Why do then people
again see the dishonesty again? He's now alleging that these people, pro-rich people, conservative side, fiscal conservative side, argues that it will ruin the lives of poor people. He's hyperbolizing, obviously, dishonestly, because people are saying people just won't work. Getting lazy does not even have to mean a behavioral pattern change. It just means you will not go to work. If you get paid out of somebody else's pocket an amount less of which you would have made in that job, why the fuck would you work? Now, so we are going to ignore the main meat of the argument, and we are going to hyperbolize and exaggerate and say people are saying their lives will be ruined because of charity, and therefore you see right-wingers, fiscal conservatives are such idiots.
also say, because if there's data that freebies are actually helping, that the freebie politics in India is ruining the country?
So there is a question which is slightly distinct there. So I think part of it is what we discussed, which is that people don't like the idea that, their tax money is being given to this issue you read all the time, I must say, and depresses me.
But do you think that freebie economy or freebie politics is ruining country?
I don't, but I still think, I actually, it's interesting that all parties do it. And I don't think it's ruining the country. But I do.
They keep topping it up.
I have to keep topping it up. But remember, the country is also getting richer. It's not that the share of GDP going to the poor is dramatically exploding. So as the country gets richer, there's more GST, as we discussed.
Oh, we are getting richer. We are getting richer. But he does not trust the GDP numbers. What the fuck is going on here? He doesn't trust the GDP numbers, but they are going on. But they are increasing to such an extent that the country is richer enough to give more freebies. 2 plus cycle is equal to dinosaur now. English grammar has a new meaning after this podcast, not just maths and economics.
And there's more money
for welfare.
So I don't see a reason why this is such a awful thing. But nonetheless, I do think that the one worry which is real and maybe is that there's a little bit.
Sit with that, sir. Sit with that guy from Hoover Institution for 5 minutes and you'll know why it's a matter of such worry.
Bit of, chasing visibility there. So, in Tamil Nadu, it was famous that, before the election, the chief minister would summon people and tell them, this time TV is for everybody or computers for everybody. So there is a little bit of that. It's not clear that everybody needs a TV or needs a computer. So I do think that there is some amount of, visibility chasing, which makes it sometimes wasteful. So I think there is some reason to try to be very disciplined about these things and say that, here's what the evidence says.
Okay, finally, a new argument that he's not apparently, although he doesn't say so explicitly, we are giving an apology for him because we are just fair people. He's saying he doesn't isn't in support of any and every freebie. They must be targeted, essentially. That's what he's saying. So some of the freebies are in fact for the politician's showmanship, and for some reason he has a problem with that. What if that politician is a poor guy? What if his dreams are getting answered now because of being in politics? And because of his specific freebies that are just for showmanship, even those freebies go into somebody's lives, right? And how are their lives not exponentially more productive if just free stuff makes people more productive. Why do you have a problem with some freebies then? Okay. Now that we are going to discuss targeted programs, there we have to get into who's going to pay for the salary of the bureaucrat again, who's going to make sure it's targeted and not just for anybody and everybody. So there are again trade-offs and no solutions. But Ashok Lahiri, interestingly, in my podcast with him, when I was also going on with targeted, though I'm not in favor of targeted stuff myself, I'm for universal stuff because I don't want further social cleavages. So he said, he also kind of made fun of it, that you are going on with targeted, and then he went on a counter argument, and I also added that, yes sir, target korte gele to ekta amla ke boshe salary dite hobe. You'll have to pay some salary to the bureaucrat who's going to make sure it's targeted.
We should really invest this money thinking about the long term, rather than here is a pre-election scheme which happens to be computers for every school, but it may be that that's not what they need. I do think that there is some validity to the concerns.
So do you feel this competitive welfareism for popularity in winning votes, is it good or bad?
I would say that overall it's meant that more money is going to the poor, so it's good. I mean, I think, as I said, there are better ways to do it, and I'm happy that Bihar went through this, and they really went through the research. We discussed the research with them, so they were very mindful of the fact that money, eventually, if you want to do it for.
Gauri Evans says, I don't know if you know this, but he has in fact said this recently, just like 5-6 months back. He said that, who says Bengal's economy is not doing great? It's doing great. There are so many restaurants I see around.
All the poor, his money is scarce.
And what would be a better model to give? The way government is in like few specific states, they're giving it to women 1,000 rupees a month, or 3,000 rupees a month, 2,000 rupees a month. What do you think is a better way? That giving them 1,000 rupees a month for the next 5 years, or giving them upfront, like 70,000 upfront?
So women's labor market opportunities are often very constrained. So will their family let them start a business? I remember a lot of the women we worked with in that graduation program were actually either abandoned women or widows or husbands who were had a stroke and were not going to do anything, and so they were actually working. And whereas a lot of our
তো তার জন্য আমার ইকোনমিক্স এর বেসিস গুলো ভুলে আছে চন্দ্রকান্ত।
this whole issue about labor force participation, and so I don't know whether women will be allowed. This whole story that I told is about women being able to work. And so that's the reason why it may be different for women
in India. And doesn't it become a big, like a hole or pocket or like big burden on a state's capital, or like,
because it's a bottomless pit. You're going on feeding that monster. 10 rupees at a Save the Puppies project, now 100 rupees at Save the Puppies project, and there's going to be infinite amounts of money for that. All out of the blue. Some hypothetical puppies are the problem to solve. There's no other problem to solve. I guess it's, broadly speaking, from the POV of the state, it might be a way to approach this problem in a decentralized way, and this might be an effective way to do it. That everybody go, let them fight amongst yourselves for solving whatever problem you can to the best of your ability, and I'll distribute some resources for all of you. Whichever you can solve to whatever extent, I'm happy. That's pretty much the governance model for India at this point, and policy framing, policy discourse. That's it. Deal with it is what it is. Don't wish for things, and see a problem in front of yourself. Compartmentalize it. Forget how we got here. Forget what might be the second order, third order consequences of your fucking policy. Just solve that policy in front of you. And therefore, you as a guy looking for funds, or the bureaucrat, you're going to have to think, oh, that Save the Puppies program, that requires $1 million fund now from the government. Otherwise, we are all fucked.
Budget, right? Isn't that a problem? Because then, is that not harming state, because they're spending literally lakhs of crores of rupees?
Another way to think about it is that the fact that there is social peace, and that India is a relatively stable country, and that there's not a lot of violence and all that, has something to do with the fact that the inequalities that are as glaring as they are. You started with the inequalities, so I know you're
So what, by the way?
aware of it, are not allowed to explode totally. That in some sense, the poor are not allowed to go to zero. So, I think there is something there about maintaining social coherence that's critical in any society. So I don't even think that I think the rich should understand that, the access to a...
Tech bros, remember this point. Because in the end, what it's going to come down to is, whatever the cost, let's have tech bros get good jobs. That cannot be the policy. But no matter what the cost, let's have all poor people employed. That has to be a policy according to his worldview. Because social cohesion. And why doesn't social cohesion get affected? Because if you as a tech bro go jobless, but it's in fact affected if a poor person gets affected, is poor. If a poor person, let's say, is not employed, because soft bigotry of low expectations. Shrayan Abhijit Banerjee assumes is not going to go on a tolabaji spree because if he goes jobless, but a poorer man will. Fair enough, maybe Shrayan's parents can support him, therefore he won't have to become a tolabaj. But everyone else just becomes tolabaj out of social pressures. So you see, the poor people who are victims of those tolabajes, they have come from a different planet. They are not poor people. They didn't take up tolabaji. Maybe they have secret wealth still in Bangladesh or some other country. So how to make a coherent argument out of a bunch of trivia that Abhijit Banerjee randomly spouts and vomits? Can we? So stability is an issue only if poor people are involved, and they must not ever go to zero. They must have something to lose, otherwise they burn down the hierarchy. Therefore, tech bros, you can go jobless if a company doesn't come in.
Stable, large economy is partly funded by these social programs.
You have publicly said that tax havens should go.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Should go, meaning every country should want them gone. I mean, why would you want tax havens? It's a bit like, it's undermining your own project of taxing people. And then, I mean, there's a little bit of cynicism sometimes in the sense that governments often want to, pretend that they are very serious and then not do it because the rich are very powerful. But beyond, I see no reason to have any sympathy for tax havens.
But why do governments don't ban tax havens? Which one would be the most lucrative tax haven in the world?
Probably less. I think both Switzerland and Monaco are probably, but they're less and less good tax havens.
They're not great tax havens. Like St. Lucia and all of that would be
they're great tax havens, but they are a little bit less, people are, what Monaco does is it's like...
Shrayan, I was actually going to hint at that, but actually on the way to making that argument, I realized that what he's going to probably end up saying is that, no, his poor morals are also because he's poor economically. So, the California laws that stealing is not a crime. Go steal anything go shoplift. It's okay. You're poor. Slavery. Like that Amazon train that got robbed. Or if you steal anything below $100, it's not theft. That kind of stuff. You are immoral just because you're poor. So first of all, he's saying poor people are immoral, but it's just because they're poor, or not for any other reason. So in order, so it's essentially apologia for extortion. In order to prevent poor people from harming you, give them money. So guys, freebies are protection money from the poor for law-abiding middle class and rich people. And that's a good thing, according to socialists. We are supposed to pay protection money because social cohesion gets fucked when capitalism happens. Holy shit. এভাবে তো ভেবে দেখিনি.
You become a resident, there are no taxes. It's much more like a legit. Now, if you move to St. Lucia or Granada, it's a little bit dodgier. So
it's shady.
So there is some trade-off there. But I think both Monaco and Switzerland are moving towards a more they're more complying better. So I think that this is changing, and I think they should change totally.
But why a country like India doesn't ban these tax havens?
The question is, what does it ban mean? So we are also, Mauritius and Dubai are big investors in India. So Indians take residency in Dubai, and so what does it mean?
Why though? What's the life of a poor person in Dubai? And why do people go to Dubai? What is there?
You can't invest in India if you're a resident of Dubai. Dubai gives you no taxes. So it's not that. So the question is more, what is what counts as taxable income in India? And there are countries, the US, for example, which are much more tough about that. They don't, you
Guys, you all have to argue this point, especially Bengalis, especially Bengali tech bros who will discuss Abhijit Banerjee with their other commie friends. This is the crux of Abhijit Banerjee's argument. Pay the poor so that they don't fucking kill you. Extortion cannot be justified, guys. We have got him. To quote the great Barack Obama, we got him. Abhijit Banerjee justifies, apologizes for extortion, and he also hates tech bros. We'll get to that later.
can't just say that I'm leaving, bye-bye, and I won't pay taxes. And, and Sweden has an exit tax you have to pay to leave. So there are countries that can do much more. But it's a matter of, you can't tell people that you can't move to Dubai. So therefore, you have to think of what that, when you say ban, what does it mean? So if there was a world agreement that says that, if Dubai does it, we'll stop all trade with Dubai, then indeed you would have the problem would be, or if St. Lucia has to grow all its crops because we're not going to give them any food, then it would, Iran has a trade. After all, the using trade to coerce countries is not unknown. So we could do it. We could say that Grenada gets no more rice, and then they will presumably have to collaborate a bit more.
But why it should happen? Because countries like probably, let's say, Monaco or the UAE.
Guys, now look at the genius of Raj Shamani. Or maybe he did it by mistake. This rando on YouTube is going to push back on a Nobel laureate, and the Nobel laureate is going to fluster.
They survive on the fact that they're building such a good, safe, secure country, and which is probably tax efficient for highly ultra-net, high-worth individuals, whatever you want to call them. They attract, that is how they attract, or else they're just going to be deserts and barren lands.
But why? But the amount of damage they do to countries which have many, many, many more people. It's a matter of people, right? So eventually we want to help a lot of people, large populations, and these countries do huge damage too.
But it's always going to be like a debate of how do you do citizens of these countries matter more because that's how they make money versus some other country where there are more people.
But I think the debate is more about. I mean, it's true that there will be.
Oh, now the debate. The debate topic is wrong. You see, Raj Shamani was arguing on something else. Abhijit Banerjee apparently is arguing something else. He got so screwed with this question that he wants to move the conversation away.
A debate, but it's when my economic model is that I'm.
Did you see almost an entire full minute of stammering? This is the part I was talking about. Listen to this question and listen to the house. Check out the House of Cards.
They survive on the fact that they're building such a good, safe, secure country, and which is probably tax efficient for highly ultra-net, high-worth individuals, whatever you want to call them. They attract. That is how they attract, or else they're just going to be deserts and barren lands.
But why? But the amount of damage they do to countries which have many, many, many more people. It's a matter of people, right? So eventually we want to help a lot of people, large populations, and these countries do huge damage too.
But it's always going to be like a debate of how do you do.
Raj Shamani, the pro-market libertarian, guys. P-Bharat, by the way, no, you're probably getting this one section wrong. He was arguing that since it's going to end up like that we ask St. Lucia to grow their own food, therefore we won't be able to do it. He was just saying that it's the reality of the world that we can't ban tax havens. He's saying, yeah, ideally we should, but we can't because of these complexities. He's not saying that regardless of the complexities, ban it anyway. He's not saying that.
Citizens of these countries matter more because that's how they make money versus some other country where there are more people.
But I think the debate is more about. I mean, it's true that there will be a debate, but it's when my economic model is that I'm going to exploit some other country, then you could say that country has a right to push back. So I mean, Europe is basically, I think, this minimum tax on corporates will happen. So all companies will have to pay. If they want to sell in Europe, they can't just locate in St. Lucia. And so, I mean, Europe, after all, is providing their market. Why should Europe subsidize their lifestyle? Europe should do exactly that, which is they should impose a high minimum tax on any income that comes from selling in Europe or ban selling in Europe. I think that will happen, actually.
That happens in India as well, right? Like even if you're in some other country and you're selling it here,
no, and we don't have a
place of business. You have to pay at least not personal tax, but you have to pay the GST and stuff like that.
We don't pay. I mean, we don't have any tax.
Why Rajesh Shamani doing pro-market pushbacks to Abhijit Banerjee? क्या चल रहा है? देखो भाई, ऐसा तो नहीं होना चाहिए. आइडियली क्या होना चाहिए कि राजेश शर्मानी कुछ भी बोलेगा, ऐसा काउंटर होगा कि अभिजीत बनर्जी हंस पड़ेगा और बोलेगा no bro, that's wrong. Like what Sandeep Balakrishna reacted to Ranveer Allahabadiya when he said that I'm the most Hindu amongst all my friends. I worship Bhairava, and even I don't think that Muslim kings have created much trouble. And Sandeep Balakrishna just looks at him and smiles because he's thinking, oh, bro, what the fuck are you saying? That should have been the situation Abhijit Banerjee is in, but why is he flustered? He's flustered because the question actually pushed him. Why does a YouTuber rando's question end up pushing a Nobel laureate? If that happens, then what are we paying for? The economics degrees. Why?
Meta, on Alphabet. I mean, are they paying any taxes on anything? No,
but they must be paying GST just to operate here.
No,
they're not paying corporate tax.
No, but they're not.
And the Indian entities must be paying, no?
Because they're not selling anything here. They're selling advertising online. So I don't think they are. I mean,
I apologize, guys. Please check out Raj Shamani pushing back again. This is gold.
Is to do exactly that, which is they should impose a high minimum tax on any income that comes from selling in Europe or ban selling in Europe. I think that will happen, actually.
That happens in India as well, right? Like even if you're in some other country and you're selling it here,
no, and we don't have a
place of business. You have to pay at least not personal tax, but you have to pay the GST and stuff like that.
We don't pay. I mean, we don't have any tax on Meta, on Alphabet. I mean, are they paying any taxes on anything? No,
but they must be paying GST just to operate here.
No,
they're not paying corporate tax.
No, but they're not.
And the Indian entities must be paying, no?
Because they are not.
Tech bros assemble. Now the argument that makes me believe that he hates you is coming. Okay, check this out. Meta and all don't pay any taxes, etc. Let's see where the argument goes.
But they must be paying GST just to operate here. They're not paying corporate tax.
No, but they're not.
And the Indian entities must be paying, no?
Because they are not they're not selling anything here. They're selling
Raj Soel. How much money, guys?
Advertising online. So I don't think they are. I mean, I'm not an expert on Indian tax law. Okay, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I doubt that they're paying much in taxes.
Interesting.
I doubt that.
What? Abhijit Banerjee's response now is, I'm not an expert on that, but I have a vibe that it's true. I'm not sure if it's true, but I guess it's true. That's his argument now. Because of one pushback that he received in the last 15 years from a YouTuber rando.
I'm not an expert on Indian tax law. Okay, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I doubt that they're paying much in taxes.
Interesting.
I doubt
they pay very much because in fact Europe is fighting this battle against Trump to get to tax the Alphabet and Meta and I guess Microsoft or whatever these companies. Europe is fighting, and Trump basically forced them to not tax them. So I don't think actually we would dare.
Meta paid 5,993 crore in income tax in 2026 to the Indian government.
Yeah, but is that because they are as a fraction of their
fraction? Why not more?
Let's do it as a fraction of their revenue coming from India. That's the part I don't know.
Yeah, so the point is that they pay some tax based on, I think there is some rule that all the services which are being availed here, you will have to pay taxes here on that. You probably don't have to pay personal income tax because probably Mark would be making, that's a personal citizenship. But I think company, the place of business,
the profit tax, we don't get the profit tax. I do think that
the co must not be paying, but the Indian co must be paying.
Yeah, the Indian co is probably paying. I'm saying the Europeans are fighting this battle as we speak. So I don't know exactly tax. I'm not, tax law is now 2 steps away from me, but I can tell you that the Europeans are fighting this battle, and Trump is very much, that's why they are so pro-Trump. You could imagine a law which says that every country, every market gets the same share of, if you were operating in a market, after all, we provide them with a huge market.
Yeah, we're the consumption market.
Yeah, why do we provide them free? So the question is what's the scale of it? So I think that's one question. And then the question of personal income and paying taxes on it is a distinct question. Yeah. So I do think that those are separate.
It's
Here is my argument. This is the section. He says they're getting a huge market. So no matter how much employment they generate for tech bros, we are going to make sure they pay their quote unquote fair share, and then they get to do business here because they're mysteriously providing us some free service and we are the ones who are giving them the market. None of our people are getting any benefit out of it. None of our government's promises are getting fulfilled of it, of creating jobs. Because it's a tech bros, they can go fuck themselves. They don't create social cohesion problems if they go jobless. So their joblessness can be tried. Even if we have to push Zuckerberg to pay more taxes and have one less yacht. But for poor people, it's make or break. You don't pay money to a poor person, he's going to come for you. That is the argument.
It's interesting to me because yesterday I was having a conversation with Sameer Saran. He said the same thing, that we give such a big, large, humongous consumption market and a potential market which is growing and getting richer, and we don't price it right, and we are just giving it away for free.
Yeah.
He said the same thing. You're saying the same thing. Almost every thought leader is moving in this direction.
But I think Europe is fighting this battle right now. So it's not, it's the signals are there, which is that Europe is trying to get these large American global service providers to be taxed based on the revenue that they are getting from European countries.
China, how do they do it?
China doesn't allow these people in. So very simple.
Apple is there, right? Actually,
Apple is there. But
See, China is so awesome that they don't allow these people in. How can they afford to? Because they did some other shenanigans that we are not allowed to do. And we're going to ignore it because the world is what it is.
Apple is a company also in China. They're producing, so but you know,
Different things,
they don't. Yeah, they don't allow WhatsApp or Google, so they don't have the same problem.
They're like, they close the economy.
Yeah.
Do you think for economy to grow, keeping it close makes sense? Just like what China did?
I think China never kept it closed. I mean, when it started growing, China.
What? Guys, what a great job Raj Shamani has done. Listen to this answer. Closed economy is also bad. China is also good. But China is also good now. It has always been good. 1991 did make a difference. Congress deserves credit. Pre-1991 did not harm India. Therefore, also Congress deserves credit. That kind. Heads I win, tails you lose, guys. This is crazy fucka flat stuff going on.
For economy to grow, keeping it close makes sense? Just like what China did?
I think China never kept it closed. I mean, when it started growing, China was always, what they did was they undervalued their exchange rate. So that's a little bit like closing, because Chinese things were cheap and foreign things were expensive. But they were never closed. They were always open because they realized that at this point, we need chips. If we want to do, if we want to be competitive in AI, we need chips. And if you don't.
So you see, China began with Deng Xiaoping. Before that, there was no China. That's like before 1947, there was no India. Before Deng Xiaoping, there was no China.
Get the chips, will just zero chance. If we don't, and NVIDIA is not, we need to, it's an American company, we'll have to pay that. So I do think that there is no alternative to especially in today's world, to using the world market for the key inputs. So I don't think we can afford to be closed. And I think we did very badly when we were fully or almost fully closed. We were, everything was such a pain to get that people weren't using the right inputs, and everything was a little bit of a jugaad and all that. So
before 91.
Before 91. So I think we've been there, done that. I do think that, do we have to be, is perfectly open or partly open? These are harder questions. But, the Chinese certainly were not fully open. They always kept their exchange rate undervalued, which then is a way to basically close it partly.
Talking about China, that gets me to our economy again. We are in this race where we're going to be competing against China and US at some point in a couple of decades or years from now. And we are at this point chasing Japan, right? So it's like our GDP is almost going to be around that. Yet an average Indian is probably 10 or 11 times poorer than an average Japanese. Does it mean that we are growing as an Indian and we have arrived? Or does it just mean that it's some number which is good for books and pride and it actually means nothing?
I mean, the GDP comparison, I already said this, means very little to me. There is some significance. Of course, we have.
But our freebies are mysteriously increasing, even though GDP is pointless, guys.
More sway in the world than, Guyana, because we have more of a, we're a bigger market. If we banned, like China has, Alphabet, it would be costly for Alphabet in a way that's not, if Guyana bans Alphabet, it's not going to be. So, but I think the size matters. But first order is very little to do with what we should really take pride in, which
integral humanism
is quality of life for our people.
And quality of life, is it improving?
It has improved in some ways, but I think especially if you look at the the amenities we provide the poor, there I really think,
The poor people's amenities are not as awesome as Elon Musk's amenities. That is the problem, you see, guys. Holy fuck. When will I master the skill to counter this level of insanity without curse words? When is that day going to come? Oh my God. So, definition of poor, according to commies, or even chupa commies like him. Poor person is anybody who drives a rickshaw. Give him an e-rickshaw. Okay, now all the poor people have rickshaw. So you see, a poor person is he who drives an e-rickshaw. Give him a small Tata Nano. Okay, all of the poor people are driving Tata Nano. No. Poor people is he who drives a Tata Nano. Give him a Tesla for his daily wage earning, and then his life is set. Oh, all the poor people are riding Tesla. No, he needs a rocket from SpaceX for free. Only then he can feel happy about himself. No, all the poor people are roaming about in rockets. What the fuck? You see, we need to actually build a planet which is a self-driving thing, but also generates employment, because someone has to sit there and hit the autopilot button. Oh, fuck.
If you go to the kind of not the central part of Delhi, but like Rohini or Dwarka or places like that. I know Mumbai less, but it is such completely desolate places. I mean, the urbanization is so low quality. There are no parks. There's dusty. Children get to play in the dust.
Poor people don't have parks and play in the dust. AQI is high. AQI would not be as high if we did less development, of course. Our general way of construction is a fucked up process which creates the AQI and our dusty general geography. But some free money can solve. There's always a bag of money lying around somewhere in the country which can solve this.
Rather than in some place which is healthy. I mean, the quality of the air is terrible in Delhi. It's so terrible that people.
Yes, the poor people in Delhi, they don't breathe that because they have air purifiers in every room, but the poor person doesn't get that.
I mean, some estimates are that, people are losing 10 years of their life. I mean, these kinds of numbers should really, that's quality of life, right? It's just how long do you live? If you're sick from the age of 55 because your lungs get weak, then that's low quality of life. And I think a lot of people, except those who can.
You see, it does not matter that I'm right now living a life more comfortable than any king in history. It matters that Delhi's AQI is bad.
Afford to get out of Delhi and go to the house in Goa.
This is just straight up anti-liberalism stuff. This is man. How is it anything different from any Dehati right-winger in India? Who's that guy? Stephen Pinker. Stephen Pinker would faint at this.
In the winter, or those who can have air purifiers in every room and good ones. I think for the rest, it's a bit of a. If you talk about quality of life, I mean, that's the trade-off. Delhi used to have much better air. I mean, now the poor are
much better air. When the freebies were lesser, isn't it, doctor?
Richer in Delhi, but the air they breathe is terrible.
Yeah. So you said poor or richer in Delhi?
Yeah, I mean that compared to 1990.
Okay.
The poor in Delhi are much better paid, even inflation adjusted. But does that mean that their quality of life is higher?
You wrote another paper. Marry for what?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
What determines marriage is a huge economic choice. So, you can, and it's always been. There was in the Middle Ages. There was in Europe. There were a lot of people died very young, and a lot of widows who were older, meaning they were 28, would marry 18-year-old boys because they wanted a strong boy to work on their farm, which their husband had been widowed, and so it was always an economic choice. They were buying labor. So and now in India, we in a sense we do the reverse. We buy labor. I mean, women, it's very cheap labor who she works like 12 hours. Khana banana. Taking care of the elderly. This that school, get the children to school, come back, cook for their. They have very long days. So in a sense, there's always that element of. So is marriage an economic choice? Of course. And the question we were asking.
Yes, Ron. And the only reason he burns that stubble and doesn't eat it, maybe, is because he's poor. if only you had given him out of your own taxes some new machine, then you would not have to burn that. You could have funded his personal processing plant where the air is purified and only the smell of rose petals arrive in Delhi from Haryana. It's because you have not funded it, Shravan.
Was, is it, how much of it is, how important is caste in these decisions? And we found that it was very, despite being an economic choice, caste is very important.
How? What did you find?
We found that the premium on getting a groom and this is not necessarily the choice of the woman, but of the family, a premium on groom who is from the same caste is like the difference between a high school degree and an MA. That's a big difference. So people were willing to sacrifice a lot of education for caste matching.
And you've seen that different castes have different wealth structures. How? Like, is even in 2026 there are some caste who ends up getting wealthier than others?
Yeah, but I mean, we discussed this. I mean, in the end, it's not that social connections matter, family, kind of background you come in, the fact that your uncle who can give you a loan of 10 crores to start your business matters. So why wouldn't it be? And your uncle is from your same caste. There's nothing surprising about that.
Do you think in future, now that the AI is coming, the inequality will be more or less?
I think that what's going to happen is that especially the middle class will be hollowed out.
But then will the UBI come?
I think we are a little bit, moving towards covering more people in, the fact that, the PDS covers 75% now is not accidental. We're moving towards including a lot of the middle classes into these schemes. Whether UBI will come anytime soon, no, because I think we are still, our tax capacity is still extremely, we as we were discussing, if we start to try to tax the rich, they will move to Dubai and put their money in Maldives. And so I'm skeptical that we're going to get there anytime soon.
OpenAI recently published a paper, right? And they're working on it very openly.
Yeah.
That at some point, because AI is going to do most of the jobs, then we will have to launch universal basic income. Yeah, do you think that's the future?
I think the part that OpenAI is not open about is how will we fund?
Guys, by the way, again, in this context, in the AI context, the argument suddenly is that some jobs are going to be lost and we can't really do anything about it because, as you said, Raj Shamani said in the beginning of the podcast that people will leave if we tax them too much, to which I had said back then that no, you can't do that. The governments have exit taxes and stuff, but now you can't do that because we don't have exit taxes.
And who's going to pay the taxes?
Yeah, because he's saying that UBI is not going to be possible because we don't have enough revenue for that. He's going to say that. And who's going to pay the taxes? Now he's going to ignore that he himself said in the beginning that no, you can tax everybody's balls out because they can't leave, they have exit taxes.
And I really think that it's very easy to say that productivity will be high, so we don't need workers and we can give them UPI. All sounds good, but then you ask them, okay, then shall we have a 70% tax rate on the rich? Because that's how we'll fund it. How will we fund it otherwise? I don't understand this. This conversation is a bit dishonest in my view. We really need to talk about paying.
No, why can't you fund tax them to 70%? Because commies of his ilk make this argument repeatedly for US as well, that when US had the highest growth rates, their tax rates were 91%. Now, did they get that high growth because they were being taxed at 91%? If so, why not 100%? If not, maybe that success came out of something else in spite of that 91%. So why can't we tax people at 70%? Why are some freebies good? UBI is not good. Because it's not targeted, I guess.
Much higher tax rates than we are facing now. And then I'm very keen to join that conversation because I have thought about it, but I just don't see the fiscal side of it needs to be honestly dealt with before we can talk about UBI.
So like the rich who are making consolidated wealth should be taxed way more.
Way more. That's the only way if you want to get into the UBI conversation, there is no.
Are you in favor of that though?
Yes, I'm in favor of
UBI further.
Whether it's UBI, that's a more difficult question. The question of taxing the rich more, yes. Whether right now we need UBI or we need to have more targeted, if in India we went to do that, we're still pretty poor. We may want to do more targeted investments than that. There's a lot of other things we need. We need urban infrastructure. We need to deal with the pollution in our cities. There are many things that are valuable. Whether I would say UBI is the number one on that list, we need to improve our education institutions. There are many things we need to do. That's a much harder question on whether we should go directly to UBI or we should invest it in other things. Should we tax the rich more? Yes.
There is one thing which came in my research, which was about, you were in Bihar for 10 days, and even in jail there was inequality.
Yeah.
What inequality was there? They're like jailers of certain studies. Just give me the example.
1893, I think, or something. Indian penal code used to, which now we have replaced, but it was was what we were jailed under. There was a provision which said that people with bachelor degrees can get bindi or vegetables. The others get, they get different diets. So we were going to get, if we could prove that we had all bachelor degrees, we could get, vegetables without dal. Otherwise, you just get dal roti. That was literally the law, which is that if it's an amazing, you're jailed, but you will get better bindis if you are graduate.
Because there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So the state is just doing efficient allocation of scarce resources.
Why? This is in 1893. They have other values. I mean, it's hard to
Why?
Caste was much more accepted. There's all kinds of things were different. It's hard to go back to that point and ask so much why.
Did you learn anything specific in those 10 days when you were in jail, which nothing else in your life can teach you?
We were very privileged because a lot of friends were with us. I think being alone, I would have gone nuts. I think with all I was there with really many of my very close friends who are very close friends now.
Even today.
Yeah.
Last question I have. You said GDP is quite not a metric that we should be looking at. It's not like a number. We should, that's like somewhere like you don't take GDP very seriously.
I don't take it very seriously because I know a little bit about what goes into that sausage. And
even though the growth of that implies more freebies.
A lot of it is, for example,
and standard of life has, I guess, also
might notice is big in India. The informal sector is actually not measured on a yearly basis. Okay, it can't be done. So what they do is they kind of use a coefficient. They estimate it from some model which they build every 5 years. I think we're using some NSS data to connect. If this is how much spending is happening in the formal sector, this is how much spending is happening in the informal sector. Now the fact that the informal sector is shrinking now because of GST and all that, and the formal sector has grown, all of this, how do you take into account? It becomes so when you talk about the growth rate is actually not 8.7 but 8.6 or 6.8 or these second digits after the decimal. I don't have much faith in those numbers. I know how they're manufactured a little bit, and so yes, India's got richer. I don't think there is anyone who's disputing that. How much richer exactly, and how good is our measure? And
what should we measure? What number?
Okay, that might be a fair argument. Yeah, we may not be exactly whatever trillion we are. We may be 3.7 something. That much of fudging probably is going on, but that much of fudging has no bearing on any of the arguments he's making or the arguments we are making.
What should we look at, if not GDP?
None of our arguments become wrong or right just because India is $3.73 trillion as opposed to the claimed amount.
GDP.
I think we do need to look at GDP. It's just the question is, should we invest more in measuring it, or are we doing? And if we don't invest more, then should we put so much faith in that number? That's more the question. I'm not saying we should give up on it because I don't think it's still the globally accepted measure of the size of an economy. I'm not going to be the one who says that give it up. But it's certainly the case that we put too much on this year 6.8%, last year 6.7%. But yeah, it's so kind of. It's a squishy thing, so you don't want to spend too much emotional energy on that kind of comparison. You can say that we are doing okay as an economy. We can see that the GST collection this year was the record, and so this quarter was a record, and that's a measure of transactions. So that's in some ways as good a measure as GDP. It sort of gives you a sense of scale that things are improving. The GST is higher now. Of course, GST what gets covered by GST varies, and the rates vary. So you have to still bury us into those numbers to see exactly what that implies. But it's not. I don't think any statistics is telling us that the economy is not growing. It's just how fast, etc. Then there is people have different views. So I think we could do better on many things. No, not one number tells you the full story. So there's no point in trying to think of the Holy Grail doesn't exist.
Fair. Well, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for spending time with us and explaining the concept basics of things. I really enjoyed talking.
Yeah. I'm sure he explained it really well
to you.
It was very fun. Thank you.
What was that story of जब आपको फोन आया था कमिटी से, लोकल कमिटी से, तब 2 घंटे पहले आता है? What is that story? And then you were feeling sleepy. क्या था?
सुबह 4 बजे आते हैं.
Okay.
तो 4 बजे कौन उठता है? तो मैंने सो गया फिर. I knew that people might call, so I switched off the phone and went to sleep. I told my wife कि आज काफी लंबी दिन जाएगी क्योंकि बहुत सारे सेलिब्रेशंस होगा, तो अगर मैं अभी नहीं सो लेते तो शाम को थक जाएंगे.
Really? नींद आ गई.
पूरा.
Thank you so much. Episode.
No, thank you, Raj Shamani, for pushing back really fucking well. if it's not coming from your brains, you have hired the right people for doing your research. Kudos to you on that. Thanks a lot, guys, on the live chat. We had real fun here, but I'm Bengali and we have a Bengali Nobel laureate and can't even happily celebrate him and be proud about him and say to non-Bengalis, see, we have this guy. एक मिलाज के दिन में वो भी ऐसा. I wonder if he believes in age tax. The more you live, the higher tax they pay. No. Poor. The only metric is whether you have a lot less money compared to whoever else exists in the country right now. Because if your quality of life is increasing, then you don't have a Tesla, you don't have AQI, etc. So, in the end, cosmic justice. Exactly what Thomas Sowell diagnosed. An ideal, hypothesized utopia where there's just not enough for the poor ever. Which means that same debate that Thomas Sowell and a feminist lady once got into. A short-haired feminist. I'll check that out right now if you all have time. The woman goes on saying the bottom 20%, and Thomas Sowell at one point is just weirded out that what exactly is your intention? Eliminate the 20% because mathematically speaking, someone or the other, no matter what the GDP per capita of the entire country, someone or the other some people are going to be at the bottom 20% of the economic hierarchy. Then your argument is just that, oh my God, the lives of those 20% is getting better and they are on the verge of death because of starvation, etc. Man, this cut was really deep. And this is the conversation I've repeatedly had with senior people in RSS affiliated organizations, etc. People who have been in RSS their entire lives as well. This is the argument. All the sentences I said in the last 1 minute, the counter to that from their side is, so what are you saying? Just don't care about that bottom 20% anymore? So you see, congratulations, right-wingers, congratulations, commies. You all are exactly the same. Your views are exactly the same. Let's just check out that Thomas Sowell debate. Milton Friedman was moderating it. We'll just check that out. It's just a few minutes, that section, and then we'll go offline. Yeah, here. Got it. Some of you all might have a problem with Thomas Sowell's pronunciation, but take note of the captions, okay? Thomas Sowell speaks in almost ghetto English. He dresses up like a statesman.
Cross purposes. On the one hand, we're talking about
Aditya Prasad, didn't I address that just 5 minutes back? Were you not here, or are you checking out from the beginning? If USA got its most growth because of that tax percentage of 40 to 50%, why wasn't it more? Then the growth could be more. You can either argue that it's a 40 to 50% tax rate which created that growth, which even you are not arguing, I think. You are playing the devil's advocate anyway. Or you are arguing that, or you can say that 40 to 50% tax rate was there and the growth happened in spite of that 40 to 50%. So the only commie or right-wing guy has to even argue with in this context is that specific commie who is dumb enough to argue that US's growth at that phase was because of that 40 to 50%, even though it was actually 91%. If so, why was it capped at 50%? Have 100% taxes and have growth from here to eternity. The truth, in fact, is USA was practically scoring goals in a goalpost without any goalkeeper. The world was devastated after world wars. That's why that 91% or that 40, 50% tax rate did not matter enough to the degree that it would have mattered in any other situation. Otherwise, why didn't they do 100% taxes and then get more growth?
Results that we're hoping for. On the other hand, we're talking about, I think we're talking across purposes. On the one hand, we're talking about results that we're hoping for. On the other hand, we're talking about processes that we're setting in motion.
Okay.
You're saying should we hope for certain kinds of lessening of inequality and so on? The real question, the political question is, shall we set in motion certain processes because we hope for that? And do those processes enhance or reduce freedom? And I think the argument that Milton is making, certainly the argument that I would make, is that the attempt at doing these things, and it doesn't really matter, it's a complete straw man to talk about absolute inequality.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Throughout the film, this is the straw man he brings up in order to say how ridiculous to have absolute equality. And then he goes on to say how ridiculous to have absolute homogenization as well.
As a result, you see, that you set up processes whose end result may not be any more or less inequality than exists now. But the question is, those processes may indeed reduce freedom greatly. I would go beyond the question of equality and put it more generally, that any process to ascribe any status to any group of people, equality, inferiority, superiority, must necessarily reduce freedom, because whatever the government wishes to ascribe to any group, whatever place, to use the phrase that was very common in the South, that blacks should have their place, whatever place the government is going to assign to people, that place will not coincide. That place will not coincide either with what all those people are doing or with how others perceive all those people, because there's too much diversity among human beings. To maintain any system of ascribed status from the top is going to mean reducing people's freedom across the spectrum. That's the point.
People have an ascribed status. It isn't as if government, by its intervention, creates it. People are born into this world in a given sector of a society, and many of them are born at the bottom of the society. The argument...
Her starting premise is that the government is simply counteracting that some statuses that people are born with. People don't create statuses, remember, according to her, okay? Statuses just happen. Some statuses fall from the sky and they are evil. In order to counter that, the government does non-evil status, assigns non-evil status qualities. Okay, guys, that's her starting argument.
About equality of results was an argument that was linked to equality of opportunity. People recognized that unless there was a degree of equality in a degree of enough food, enough security, access to education.
Guys, to quote the great Barack Obama again, we got her. What is the word she just used? Enough food, enough access. Who decides what is enough? Just give that enough. After that, everything will be all right.
Enough food, enough security, access to education. Unless these things were available to all children, then equality of opportunity was merely a mockery. That's why equality of results became an issue, and it became an issue for black people in the United States, and they expressed their concern, whatever the opinion.
You expressed it, damn it, look. No, they did not. They did not.
They expressed,
and then replied.
they expressed their will by their extraordinary participation in a protest movement that began in the late 1950s and didn't end until the 1960s. Intellectual.
I convinced a few poor people that they must be jealous of rich people, and then they joined me in a procession. That shows a sound economic argument, guys. What madhouse is this?
I have never.
Intellectuals were not in that protest movement.
You want me to answer? Or you want to keep going?
In that protest.
You want me to answer?
I finished.
Good. Black people have never supported, for example, affirmative action, quotas, anything of that sort. Wherever polls have been taking a black opinion on such matters of should people be paid equally or should there be this or that, black people have never taken a position that you described. So it is not a question of what black people chose to do. It's what you choose to put in the mouths of black.
Look at how she is looking at Thomas Sowell. And have you ever seen a man debate a woman in this way in India? Every man has to give 50 qualifiers and apologia before he can come out with this argument, such an argument in front of a lady. And even that will happen with a completely different apologetic sissy body language and posture. You all know that. And you all have seen live what has happened with me when I have also spoken this way with a female debater.
People is what you choose to so that black people have never taken a position that you describe. So it is not a question of what black people chose to do. It's what you choose to put in the mouths of black people. It is what you choose to project. It is not what any black people have ever said anywhere that you can put your finger on.
It's what you choose to put into the mouth of the pollsters, as far as I can see.
I
look at the leadership of the black community.
Like most people, I have never seen a pollster.
If you look at the leadership of the black...
But I want to go back to I want to carry it back to the earlier point. Number one, there's no question about what equality of results, if it comes about through a framework of freedom, is a desirable result. Number two, I argue in the film, I've argued here, that in point of fact, you get greater equality of actual results by a system under which people are free to achieve unequal results. That for the poor people of the world that Francis Fox Piven was talking about, the most effective mechanism for enabling them to improve their status is not a governmental program which seeks to ascribe to them certain positions, which seeks to provide them with certain goods and services, but a governmental program which tries to eliminate arbitrary barriers to advancement. I would say that in this world, the greatest source of inequality has been special privileges granted by government. That government, you may talk a great deal, there may be a lot of talk about how we're going to eliminate inequality. But if you look at, go back to your case of Britain, is there any doubt that one of the effects of governmental intervention in Britain has been to create new opportunities for special classes? That the way to get wealthy in a society that supposedly is aiming at equality, that the way to get wealthy is to get a special government permit to to get foreign exchange, or to import goods, or to, in this country, to set up a television station.
Okay, guys, I'm looking for that section where he tells this woman that, yeah, this is the full video.
In its mark?
No, this is not the full video. Where's his documentary? That's at the end of the documentary, he does this debate, okay? He tells the woman, what's your idea? Eliminate the bottom 20%. Can I find it? Yeah, probably.
The society that...
Very serious threat to freedom. Peter J.
Well, first, as the only British person on this panel, perhaps you would allow me to say in passing that I think that many of the things which Professor Friedman says about the British experience in the last 30 years are a gross distortion and a gross travesty of what's actually gone on in Britain, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity to come back in the course of the discussion.
Very much.
But I think that your question brings up what is, to me, the absolutely central confusion in the exposition that we saw in the film. And I'm a great admirer of Professor Friedman. I've studied him, I've listened to him, I've debated with him, and always before I found him at least clear, even when he's been wrong. Today I found him grossly confused, and in this specific and all-important respect. Is he telling us that absolute equality is a mistaken objective, in which case I think he is tilting at windmills, he is attacking a straw man. There is almost nobody on the other side of that argument. Or is he saying that any concern at all by societies and governments...
Yes, dishonest commies won't admit that they're talking about absolute inequality. So even if we say that, yeah, absolute inequality is not a good idea, even then we're not going to have an easy time. Because at this point, they're not even interested in debating. They're like Muslims who never lose debates, because at the end they will say, yes, we must have Sharia and we must kill infidels. Yes. What else is there to... If we were living in a Sharia state, we would be killing infidels. What's there to do? So you are not going to win a debate with that guy. In the same way, if a commie says, no, we are not really looking for full equality, no, that's not even possible. And you as a libertarian think, oh, finally we have some common ground. And then he says, every poor person must have a SpaceX rocket, because 5 years back, every poor guy was driving a Tesla. Before that, every poor guy was riding an e-rickshaw. So even though they do not want quote unquote full equality, they're going to go on heading towards it without arguing for it explicitly. We'll just have to convince other people that this is not the way to do it. We're not going to have any fruitful time debating them, I guess. At least not on whether or not they actually have full equality as a goal.
Absolute equality is a mistaken objective, in which case I think he is tilting at windmills, he is attacking a straw man. There is almost nobody on the other side of that argument. Or is he saying that any concern at all by societies and governments with reducing inequality is mistaken, is not only in conflict with freedom and efficiency and other human objectives, but is absolutely wrong, in which case I think he's talking absolute nonsense. His arguments tend to support the first rather platitudinous proposition that absolute equality is still less absolute sameness is a foolish and exaggerated objective. His arguments do not at all support the second claim that it is wrong to concern oneself with distribution of income and wealth and reducing inequality at all.
First of all, I would disagree violently with the notion that the people are stirring. A very small handful of intellectuals have generated an enormous amount of noise. When I look at opinion polls, particularly if I look at opinion polls of blacks in the United States, most blacks in the United States do not take any strong position in favor of equality of results. In fact, most of the polls that I've seen of blacks put them, if you want to use this expression, very well to the right of most intellectuals on most of these social issues. It is not the people who are stirring, it is a handful of intellectuals. The question is not absolute equality, it's a question of what concept of equality you're aiming at, whether you're getting it absolutely or to one degree or the other. Are you aiming at a concept of equality of opportunity at the outset, or are you aiming at a concept of equality of results? It's also not a question of whether it's material goods only, whether it's material goods, status, or whatnot. Again, the same question comes back. Are you thinking about equality of opportunity, prospective equality, or are you thinking about retrospective results at the finish line? And I think that's the crucial distinction.
What I mean by equality is the concept I would like to perceive.
Fucking retrospective results at the finish line.
It is a concept that Tom Sowell just discussed of equality of opportunity. The concept that increasingly is being taken up by the intellectual community is equality of results. Now, nobody, and I agree with Peter, nobody means identity.
You said so on the film. You said so yourself. Absolutely. All that argument about we produce one human prototype and put him in the museum, that's exactly what you said.
Nobody, when you press him, will say he means identity. And yet, if I take the logic of their argument, almost all the logic of such arguments proceeds as if identity were achievable, as if there were some way in which you could measure individual equality. As Tom Sowell was saying, you have to ask, in what direction are they moving? See, the fundamental distinction between you and me on this, I believe, is a very different one. I think there's all the difference in the world between a social or governmental system in which 90% of the people tax themselves to help 10% who are in distress, and a system in which 80% of the people in the middle try to tax the 10% on the top in order to help the 10% at the bottom. What you end up doing is you end up, Mr. A and B in the ancient story of the forgotten man, you end up with A and B imposing taxes on C to help D, and some of it, after all, in the process, gets in the hands of A and B.
You're dodging the fundamental issue which was brought up by Tom Sowell. Are you saying to us that the only form of equality that one's entitled as a society, in your view, to be concerned with is equality of opportunity, and any concern with inequalities of result is illegitimate, that any inequality, however great, provided it's thrown up by a free market system and not by a caste system or a feudal system of which kind you disapprove, that any concern with that is wrong? Are you saying that, or aren't you saying it? Because it's all important.
Concern with whom? By whom?
Concerned by the society.
The society doesn't have.
By the way, guys, see how he used caste system and feudal system interchangeably? Because that is the reality, and that is what most academics know, and only when NRI academics come to India, they pretend that's not the case. And every politician in the world, every Indian politician also pretends that that's not the case. But academics actually, in their circles, admit that, yeah, caste structures are or feudal structures.
It has governments, it has laws, it has parliaments.
Only people have concerns. People do certain things through government. And I'm not going to talk about society having values. Society doesn't have values. People have.
All right. Is it wrong for people to be concerned about inequality?
It is not wrong for individuals in their private capacity to be concerned. Anybody who is really concerned can do something about it on his own.
Is it wrong for them to elect governments which do something about it? You yourself
It's not wrong for them to elect.
You yourself have supported a negative income tax, which is a way of doing something about inequality.
It's not wrong for us to do something through government about distress.
Yeah.
But there's a fundamental distinction between relieving distress and doing something about inequality. I see no justification whatsoever for cutting down all the tall trees in order that there be no tree in the forest that is taller than the other.
When you say that it is wrong for government to intervene in the free enterprise system to do something about inequality, you evoke a model of a free enterprise system which does not exist and has never existed to a significant extent in history or anywhere in the world. That so-called free enterprise system has always...
So guys, this argument is fun. I get this often from some of my well-meaning commie friends who say, yeah, free market and all, that sounds good, but it has never been tried. So, free market, capitalism, etc., that stuff doesn't work because it has never been tried. And communism works because apparently it has been tried and has worked so well.
used government The entrepreneurs of that free enterprise system have always used government. And the question that you raise is whether other people can use government to achieve their ends. The free enterprise system, as it is spread around the world, as it is spread to Asia and Africa and Latin America, has spread through the force of arms, among other things. And those arms were wielded by governments. That was government intervention under the name of the free enterprise system, but a government intervention which destroyed the freedoms of many people, not least of which are the people of Chile.
I agree with you that everything called free enterprise is not free enterprise. I agree with you that many things have been done under the name of free enterprise that are not consistent with free enterprise. I agree with you, and we stress over and over again in this series that whenever businessmen have the chance, they will, of course, use government to pursue objectives which may or may not be in the interest of the public at large. But you always are talking about mixed systems, and I challenge you to find a single example in history at any time of any society where people have been relatively free. And I don't mean merely what you call merely economic freedom. I mean freedom in the full sense. I mean freedom of individuals to pursue their own objectives, their own values, to live their lives. I want you to name me any society in which you've had any large measure of that freedom, where capitalism and free enterprise has not been the predominant mechanism for controlling economic activity. Not the sole mechanism, but the dominant one. I want you to name me one exception.
Your conception of freedom, does that apply in Chile today? Where
Chile is not politically free.
India, meaning ancient India, Bharat, Bharatavarsha, that landmass, was successful, rich as fuck, merchants everywhere, business guild, business castes. And mysteriously, talking about that time, that era, Max Weber says India is a country that had India as a society had the least amount of anti-crematism. Anti-crematism means paisa kya hai, haath ki mail hai, that kind of talking points of Christian morality, that money is bad, etc. India had the least of that, according to Max Weber.
Chile to death.
So even India is perfectly in line with what Milton Friedman is describing.
It does not have political freedom, and I do not condone, but let me go on for a moment, if you will. You raise the question, let me answer it. Chile is not a politically free system, and I do not condone the political system. But the people there are freer than the people in communist societies because government plays a smaller role, because the free enterprise that has been emerging has been cutting down the fraction of the total income of the people spent by government, because unemployment has been going down, output has been going up, food production has been going up. The conditions of the people not for the first time, but in the past few years, has been getting better and not worse. They would be still better to get rid of the junta and to be able to have a free democratic system. What I have said, and what I repeat here, is that it's a necessary condition. You cannot have a free society, in my opinion, and I know no counterexample, and I challenge you to produce one.
Acha, so I'm not going to be able to find that clip today, apparently. Some other time. Someday we'll watch this whole thing, right? Thanks, guys. I'll take your leave now. Bye-bye. Good night. Thanks a lot for staying on. This was very constructive. Hope this situation changes in India as soon as possible. Otherwise, we are not becoming Viksit Bharat. On that depressing note, thank you. Good night.
Ni